the night in the great world of American TV series. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51 Help. Merlin is a person with connections, and he is a person with very strong connections. He is not only good friends with Prince Arthur, but also the adopted son and apprentice of the royal pharmacist, and is also good friends with the princess's personal maid. There is a reason why Gaius is Merlin's adoptive father. Do you remember the letter Hunus wrote to Gaius? In the letter, Hunus asked Gaius to become Merlin's guardian, and Gaius agreed. Although I don't understand why a man who is almost 20 years old still needs a guardian, this is the fact. It's easy to get things done with someone above, so Merlin went directly to Arthur, hoping to let his mother meet King Uther. After hearing the whole story, Arthur, who was young and frivolous, didn't think too much, and immediately took Merlin's mother to meet King Uther. So there was such a scene. A woman without any identity, less than an hour after arriving in Camelot, stood in the king's hall openly. The winter and elder is very hard. We have many children, many of whom are dying. We have nothing to eat. It must be said that Lady Hunus is a very good woman. Even though she has never had any court experience, she still calmly stated her identity, purpose and request in a choked and sad tone. If Canaan takes away our harvest, our children will starve to death. This lady knew how to say it to be more touching. She did not say how the adults were, but only how the children were. This was more touching. After all, no matter who you are, you have a natural pity for children. Please, we need your help. Sure enough, Hunus's description made most people in the hall feel sympathetic, especially Morgana, a sentimental girl, who was already in tears. She wished she could immediately agree to Hunus's request on behalf of King Uther. However, King Uther, who was sitting on the throne, still had no expression on his face. After waiting for Hunus to finish her statement, King Uther spoke. Elder is the territory of the kingdom of Sendard, and he is responsible for your safety. The meaning of this sentence is very clear. Hunesi has worshipped the wrong temple. He's from the kingdom of Camelot and has no control over the kingdom of Sendard. Hunesi certainly understood what King Uther meant, so she quickly said, "We have asked the king for help, but he doesn't care about remote areas like us. You are our only hope." After saying that, Hunesi looked at King Uther hopefully, hoping that he could help them. King Uther clenched his fists, and finally reason prevailed. "I express my deep sympathy to you, and I also hope that those barbaric and evil people can completely disappear from this world." The gap from hope to disappointment is something that no one can calmly accept, at least Hunesi can't, because it is related to the survival of the entire elder. "Then you will help us, right? This is really the last hope." King Uther lowered his head, closed his eyes tightly, and then said with a heart of stone, "I hope I can do that, too." Arthur could no longer hold back, and immediately said, "Of course. We can send soldiers over. We have enough soldiers, that's not the problem, we have enough soldiers." Morgana, who was standing under the throne, couldn't help it either. Then what's the problem? Although Morgana's relationship with King Uther had eased a lot, this kind-hearted girl still couldn't understand King Uther in many cases. In her opinion, they were doing a good thing. And since it was a good thing, what could be the problem? Regarding Morgana's question, Kai could only choose to shake his head. It was still the same problem. Whether it was Morgana or Arthur, they never thought about the problem from a real height. King Uther was the same. He was a little disappointed with Arthur and Morgana's reaction. He wasn't really heartless. Did he like to see others suffer? No one liked it. But things were never that simple, but no one ever considered this aspect of the problem. This made him always feel tired when facing his own children. Seeing that King Uther closed his eyes and didn't want to speak, Kay could only stand up and educate the two siblings. Elder is located outside the Asdir Ridge, which is the territory of Sendard. Once we Camelot send troops there, it means war. No country will allow the army of other countries to set foot on its land. Hearing this, Hunus could no longer bear it. She knelt on the ground and prayed to King Uther in the most pious and humble manner. "I know you are a good king, a kind and good man. I beg you, help me, please." Faced with such a prayer, King Uther could not be completely indifferent, but he was a king, and he had to think with a king's mind. "I spent many years reaching an agreement with King Odin of Sendrid, and the two countries have achieved peace. I cannot let thousands of soldiers go to the battlefield again for nothing just because of a small village with less than 100 people. More people will die that way. I'm sorry, Terror Camelot can't help. Faced with such an answer, Eunice, a strong woman, finally cried. This made Morgana very dissatisfied. She always thought that King Uther was too cold-blooded. Seeing Morgana's angry eyes, both Kai and King Uther felt a headache. She walked up to help Eunice, who was crying, and then looked at Kai with even more resentful eyes. She felt that her fiancé had become as cold-blooded and annoying as her adoptive father. The same was true for Merlin on the side. The disappointment in his eyes was about to overflow. Kai shook his head and finally spoke. Morgana, things are not as simple as you think. It's not that your majesty and I don't want to help, but, unfortunately, Morgana, who is already angry, didn't listen to Kai's explanation at all. She interrupted directly, but what? Kai? What on earth allows you to sit back and watch their suffering? You are no longer like yourself, you have changed. While saying this, Morgana's eyes would occasionally sweep fiercely towards King Uther, who was supporting his head with his hands. The meaning was very clear. She thought it was King Uther who made Kai become like this. Kai felt angry and funny. Well, how do you want to help them? Kai said helplessly. Hearing this, Morgana's eyes flashed with a hint of pride. She enjoyed the scene of Kai compromising for her. In her mind, this was a manifestation of Kai's love for her. Like almost all little girls, they always think that only the indulgence of their lovers is a manifestation of their love for them. Although this is really childish. Send troops. We only hope to repel the bandits. We are not interested in his territory. I think Sendard will thank us. After all, we helped him repel the bandits and protect his people. Kai shook his head speechlessly. King Uther was doing the same thing. Is this what you are thinking? Elder pays taxes and pledges allegiance to Sendard. Then you let Camelot protect their safety? And in Sendard's territory, Morgana didn't think there was anything wrong with this, so she wanted to refute it. But Kai didn't give her the chance. Well, these are not important. They are just some bandits. It is not difficult to deal with them. We can ignore Camelot's efforts, the casualties of the soldiers, and so on. But will Sendard really be grateful to us? Morgana, you are a smart girl. Think about it carefully. If one day the soldiers of another country suddenly cross the border without our permission and a battle breaks out, how would you feel? It's like your child made a mistake, but your neighbor suddenly broke into your house without your consent, beat your child in front of you as a lesson, and then walked away. What's worse is that no matter what King Odin of Sendard thinks about this, he must make the toughest gesture, otherwise his subjects will doubt whether he is still able to protect them. At that time, no matter what our motives are, war will be inevitable. Because if we don't do this, he will have done his best as a king. At that time, it will definitely bring greater casualties, whether to Camelot or Sendard. The issue of sovereignty is an issue that a normal country cannot ignore at any time and place. No country will bear such humiliation, which is more unacceptable than invading them directly. Kindness doesn't mean reckless, Morgana. That won't lead to anything good. Chapter 52, Stupid Prince. Morgana stared at Kai blankly, not believing that her fiancé would be so cold-blooded. So we have to watch them starve to death? It's cruel to say that, but, yes. They have their own kings and nobles. We have no position or power to interfere, even if we are helping them. Kai frowned, a little annoyed by Morgana's stubbornness. He even suspected that she didn't listen to what he just said. Kindness is a good thing, but kindness is not an excuse, let alone a blind reason. Is it a good thing to help Elder? Of course it is a good thing. It is never a bad thing to save people from suffering. But what about the consequences? Just because of a momentary impulse, you are stubborn and rush into it. That is not kindness, that is stupidity. Kai explained very clearly that if this matter really goes according to their idea, the final result must be much more serious than a village being harassed by bandits. At that time, it will not be just the people of one village who will die, but the lives of thousands of people. Morgana didn't listen to this. She had completely entered a dead end now. She felt that she didn't know Kai anymore. Thinking of this, Morgana didn't intend to listen to anything Kai said. She turned around and strode out of the hall heartbroken. Kai shook his head helplessly and looked at King Uther, and found that the other's eyes were also full of helplessness. They didn't know whether Morgana's naivety was good or bad. Merlin was also disappointed. He loved his mother and his hometown, so he hoped that King Uther could help his hometown, But he suddenly felt that there was no point in him staying in Camelot. He came to Camelot in the first place just to find a place that was more suitable for him. But now he was not sure that Camelot was that place. He decided to return to Elder. He needed to protect his mother instead of doing nothing here. He thought he could do something for his mother in his hometown, but reality told him that he could do nothing. "I'm sorry, Merlin." Just as Merlin was thinking about where to go, Arthur came over. "If it were up to me, we would already be on our way." Merlin looked at Arthur, who was deliberately expressionless, and laughed. He suddenly felt that this journey was not so bad. At least he had a friend who was not bad at all. Although this friend was both irritable and barbaric, and liked to order him to do this and that, but it was not so bad, right? He was a prince. "You have tried your best. I am very grateful that you asked the king to summon my mother." Merlin did not blame Arthur for this. He saw the same emotions in Arthur. He wanted to help Elder, but King Uther and Sir Kay refused. Arthur was powerless. "I really hope that Camelot can help people no matter how far they live." Arthur was still upset about what had just happened. But he was much better than Merlin and the others. At least he could understand that Kay and King Uther's considerations were not wrong. But Arthur still didn't like their way of thinking. It was the first time he heard that doing good things also had to consider the consequences. The fact that you can think like that shows that you already have ambitions. Suddenly, Kai's voice came from behind Arthur and Merlin. Arthur and Merlin turned their heads and found Kai standing behind them. Merlin bowed immediately, while Arthur turned his head away angrily like a child. He was still angry about what Kai said at that time. Kai let Merlin stand up casually, and then looked at Arthur, who was still childish. Seeing that he hadn't grown up yet, Kai was furious. He would never indulge him, so he raised his foot and kicked Arthur in the butt. Arthur was almost kicked off the wall of the palace, but Merlin quickly grabbed him. "What are you doing? You almost killed me." Arthur was so scared that he screamed repeatedly, and he forgot that he didn't want to talk to Kai just now. "Alice, when will you grow up, my brother? I just praised you, and you showed your stupidity in the blink of an eye. How can I feel at ease letting you go to Eldo?" Arthur was still frightened, but when he heard Kai's words, he immediately turned around and grabbed Kai's clothes, and asked anxiously, "What did you just say? Do you agree to help Eldo?" Kai did not rush to answer Arthur's question, but looked at Arthur's hand holding him. Arthur immediately let go of his claws, stood at attention, and asked in a more formal and calm tone, "Do you agree to help Eldo?" Kai smoothed the wrinkles on his clothes, and then slowly said, "When did we agree?" Arthur immediately opened his eyes wide and looked like he was about to get angry. But Kai's next words calmed Arthur down again. "It's just that recently the stupid Prince of Camelot and a few of his friends want to go out for an outing. I heard that their destination is a small village called Elder. Oh, should I remind him that the place is not very safe recently? I heard that there are bandits. It would be bad if the stupid prince and his friends had a conflict with the bandits." After Kai finished speaking, he looked at Arthur's silly look and shook his head again. "In short, even if something unpleasant really happens, it has nothing to do with Camelot. It's the personal behavior of the stupid prince and his friends, and it doesn't represent the official attitude of Camelot." Then he turned and left. Arthur and Merlin were left staring at each other. Who was he calling a fool just now? Arthur didn't hear anything else, but he heard someone scolding him. He had been called a fool by Morgana and Kai since he was a child, which made him very sensitive to this word. Merlin looked at Arthur in surprise, and suddenly felt that Kai was right just now. This guy is definitely a fool. How are the preparations going? Arthur asked Merlin, who was packing his equipment and saluting, while he was enjoying the fruit after dinner comfortably. If you could come to help, I think we could have set off a long time ago, Merlin also complained habitually. Arthur was just about to retort when he heard a knock on the door. Arthur could only put down the fruit in his hand helplessly and shouted to Merlin, Merlin, go open the door. Merlin could only put down the half-packed gift in his hand and walk towards the door reluctantly, muttering, why do you need help from others even for the simplest door opening? Stupid prince, what did you say? Arthur didn't hear clearly. Nothing, I'm telling you who hates to knock on the door at this time. Merlin quickly changed his words. But when Merlin opened the door, he was so scared that he didn't speak. Why did you open the door now? The man pushed Merlin open and rushed in. What are you doing? I'm almost impatient to wait. Arthur immediately put down his feet on the table when he saw the person coming, and said in surprise, Morgana. Morgana walked in with a long sword on her waist and wearing a grey hunting suit, just like a Valkyrie going to the battlefield. Behind Morgana, Gwen followed closely with a sack on her back. Why are you here? Chapter 53 Instructions. Arthur knew that the situation was not good. As a result, Morgana ignored Arthur and said to Merlin, "We will go with you." Arthur and Merlin were completely dumbfounded. If Kay and King Uther knew that they took Morgana to such a dangerous place, they would definitely be killed. At this time, Wenger struggled to throw the sack on his back to the ground, and twisted his arm by the way, looking exhausted. The sack fell to the ground, and immediately there was a sound of metal collision. Arthur and Merlin immediately stared at the sack. Seeing their expressions, Gwen seemed more surprised than them. Why? I think we can use it. I heard from Eunice that there are not many weapons in Elder. I think we should bring some. So I secretly took some chainmail and long swords from my father's blacksmith shop. Merlin stared at the sack with his eyes wide open. He suddenly felt that he might be the weakest among the four of them. The sack looked big. It must be at least 200 or 300 pounds. But Gwen carried it in like nothing happened. Merlin recalculated his own fighting power, and then he sadly found that if he didn't use magic, he might not even be able to beat Gwen, the maid. This is very embarrassing. When Merlin thought of this, he made up his mind to strengthen his physical exercise in the future, even if it was just learning a little swordsmanship. Arthur also reacted. Now is not the time to care about this. Are you crazy? We're not really going on a picnic. What can you do there? Morgana really disliked Arthur's discriminatory remarks against women. At least she never thought she was worse than Arthur. I know how to fight. At least in this respect, I'm more trustworthy than a fool like you. I can repair armor and sharpen swords. Oh, and I'm very strong, too. Well, at least stronger than Merlin, Gwen on the side also said timidly, and by the way, she also made fun of Merlin. There was no way. Merlin's fragility was well known throughout Camelot. So far, our Merlin has never won even one fight. If he didn't have an Adam's apple, many people would even think he should be a girl. Well, this also shows from the side that Merlin is handsome, the kind of handsome that is very delicate. Merlin didn't know what Arthur was like. Anyway, he suddenly felt speechless, because as long as he looked at the sack on the ground, he couldn't say anything to refute. The weight of the sack was heavier than him. In this case, if he refuted, Gwen might pick it up with one hand and throw it on the ground, which would be even more embarrassing. So Merlin could only step aside silently. Anyway, he had no right to speak. But how do we explain to Kai? I don't want to be chased by Kai with a sword when we come back. He will really kill us. Arthur was still struggling. He had no way to deal with Morgana since he was a child, so he could only talk about Kai. I don't care what he thinks. Anyway, I'm going. Morgana is still quarreling with Kai, because Kai has not apologized to her until now. She has always been unhappy with Kai's cold-blooded words in the hall. Morgana has always been well-educated and considerate, but that's only to other people. To Kai, she is a complete little woman. Arthur wanted to cry but had no tears. It turned out that he didn't care about my life or death. Kai was not as reasonable to him as he was to Morgana. If he was really angry, he would definitely not escape a beating. Knock knock. Before Arthur could think of a better way to persuade Morgana not to make trouble, Arthur's door was knocked again. Arthur immediately glared at Merlin, and Merlin immediately went to open the door obediently. If he provoked Arthur again at this time, Merlin felt that his end would not be too good, so he became particularly obedient. But just after opening the door, Merlin was so scared that he almost fell to the ground. What are you doing? Fortunately, Kai quickly grabbed Merlin, otherwise Merlin might really fall. Thank you, Sir Kai. Merlin immediately stood up and stood aside with his head down. At this time, the people in the room also saw Kai, and behind Kai followed 3 knights. But the difference is that they are not wearing the uniform of the Knights of Camelot, but some ordinary clothes, looking like civilians. The appearance of Kai made Merlin and Gwen shrink into the corner immediately, trying their best to reduce their presence. They are afraid and respectful of Kai. Although he is a respectable person, upright, kind, and brave, he is not arrogant, and is even polite to everyone. Even servants will receive his courtesy, but he seems to be difficult to get close to, because he treats everyone except his family the same. So no matter Merlin and Gwen are obviously familiar with Kai, they dare not treat him as casually as Arthur and Morgana. Kai did not care about the 2 frightened children. He was a soldier and later became a criminal policeman. It happened that these two professions were the kind of professions that were more tense in daily life. In addition, his personality is more traditional and dull, so his affinity is really not very strong. He pointed at the three knights behind him and said to Arthur, "Sir Perino and the others will go with you this time. The three of them will go with you as your followers this time, so I can rest assured. Sir Perino is experienced, and you must listen to his advice when necessary. Sir Perino is a bald black knight in his 30s. He is handsome among black people and has a serious personality. Although he is a master swordsman and one of the best in the entire Camelot knights, he does not like to show off. He works diligently and is a loyal and reliable candidate." The three knights of Perino came out immediately and bowed to Arthur. Arthur naturally knew Sir Perino, so he had no objection to Kai's arrangement. Under Kai's education, Arthur has grown a lot and no longer has the second-year idea that he must deal with those robbers alone. Remember, don't cause trouble, don't conflict with the people of Sendard Kingdom, and come back immediately after dealing with the robbers. Don't stay an elder for too long, otherwise it will be difficult to fool Sendard. Got it, got it. Arthur seemed very obedient. He knew that this was the bottom line of King Uther. They can help people, but they must not cause conflicts between the two countries. This is why Kai and King Uther disagreed to help Elder in the hall before. Anyway, this matter must not be related to the official Camelot. Arthur's chivalry is Arthur's personal behavior. After all, in addition to being a prince, he is also a knight. What's wrong with a knight doing chivalry? In short, as long as it is not related to the official Camelot, this matter is just a knight doing chivalry. Even if King Sendard is dissatisfied, he will not say anything. No kingdom will overreact because a knight travels to its territory to do chivalry. After explaining to Arthur, Kai turned to Morgana. Seeing that Morgana still had her back to him, Morgana had been in this position since Kai appeared. It was obvious that she wanted Kai to coax her. Of course, it was more likely that she wanted to use this attitude to tell Kai that she would definitely not listen to him this time and would definitely follow him to Elder. This was considered a punishment for Kai's previous behavior. Kai shook his head and gestured to the others to let them go out. Chapter 54 Elder. No one knows what Kai said in the room. All they know is that after coming out of the room, Morgana became the little woman who belonged to Kai again, obeying Kai in everything, as if she was not the one who was upset before. Arthur looked at Kai with admiration. He always thought that his sister was the most terrible woman in the world. When she was tough, she was more manly than men. But in Kai's hands, she had almost no resistance. She immediately turned from cloudy to sunny. She changed her face like turning a book. "I agree to let you go out for a walk this time, but remember, your safety is the most important thing, you know. If there's anything, let Arthur and Perino do it, and you don't rush to the front. Girls develop earlier than boys, and Morgana is older than Arthur, so Morgana could catch Arthur and beat him up when she was a child, but this does not mean that Morgana is stronger than Arthur now. In fact, Morgana's current strength can only deal with 1 or 2 low-level thugs at most. It would be difficult to face a well-trained soldier. In addition, she was born strong, so he was most worried about Morgana among the group. What did you say about Merlin and Gwen? Merlin has magic, what is there to worry about? As for Gwen, although it is embarrassing to say this, in Kai's mind, Gun Yeong is just a maid who follows the lady to appear, and a minor role with only a few lines. Why should he worry? Besides, in Kai's opinion, Gun Yeong has no figure and no looks. As long as she gets into the villagers of Elder, who can know that she is not a village girl from Elder? So what danger can she have? Unfortunately, what Kai didn't know was that this ugly maid he thought would actually counterattack and become the queen of Camelot in the future. At least this is the ending of the Merlin legend. Kai stood on the wall of the palace and watched Arthur and his group riding horses and disappearing into the distant horizon. Is it really a good idea to do this? At some point, King Uther walked behind Kai unconsciously. Kai turned his head and glanced at King Uther, who looked worried, and smiled. Then do you have a better way? As I said before, they have grown up, and many things are no longer something we can decide for them. Even if we do nothing, they will sneak out. Instead of doing this, it is better to arrange everything. At least in this way, everything can be in our hands. Kai let Arthur go. Of course, he had to inform Uther. After all, he was Arthur's father. King Uther also acquiesced to this approach. Although King Uther was serious, he was not as cold-blooded as imagined. To be honest, he also sympathized with Elder's experience, but as a king, He should be more responsible for his subjects, rather than interfering in the affairs of other countries. But when Arthur and the others really left, King Uther began to worry again. But it's not safe outside. There are too many enemies eyeing Camelot. I'm afraid, the Celtic countries have never been peaceful. On the contrary, the mutual attack between the countries is the mainstream. This is also the reason why King Uther has ushered in peace around Camelot after years of war and hard work. But even so, there are many kings and lords who are eyeing Camelot, not to mention the wizards and magicians who hate Camelot. It is not an exaggeration to say that it is full of crises. Kai looked at King Uther with amusement. How could he look like a tyrant now? He was just a nagging old father who was always worried. Don't worry, I have arranged it. Night Lion and others have been sent to the Asdal Ridge in advance. It is not far from Elder. If there is anything that Arthur and others can't solve, they will rush over immediately. Kai naturally couldn't really let a few young men run to other people's territory to cause trouble. In order to ensure their safety, Kai had made a plan. But I'm still a little worried. I didn't expect King Uther to suddenly become so sentimental. Seeing Kai's surprised eyes, King Uther's old face immediately blushed. He was still not used to showing his emotions like this. So he quickly made amends. I'm not worried about Arthur's safety, I'm just worried that they will cause some unimaginable trouble, especially Arthur. He is too impulsive. Kai thought about it, but he couldn't think of any trouble that Arthur and his friends could cause in a poor and remote place like Elder where even the king of their own country didn't bother to ask about it. He subconsciously classified this as King Uther thinking too much. But what he and King Uther didn't expect was that at the moment when King Uther said this, something changed in the dark. This change was invisible and intangible, but it did happen. After a day and a night of continuous travel, Arthur and Merlin finally arrived at the small village of Elder, Merlin's hometown. Elder is not a famous village, and it can't even be found on the most detailed map. This village is like all the villages in the Celtic countries, backward, poor and ignorant. When Arthur and his friends arrived at the village, the robber Canon was robbing the village with several men. At first glance, this group of robbers is just a kind of bandit with no style. In fact, it is normal to think about it. How could a real robber target a poor village like Eldo? What is even more unacceptable is that this group of bumpkins even robbed the grain seeds for the next year in the village. The principle of fishing in a dry pond is basically understood by everyone with a little brain, even the robbers. If the people in this village are really starved to death, who will they rob next year? But what about these idiots? Not only did they do it, but they did it without hesitation. Maybe their brain capacity does not have the option of planning for next year? In short, their extreme exploitation has made the people in the village overwhelmed, so someone stood up and negotiated with the robbers. These honest farmers did not want to have a bloody conflict. Unfortunately, this group of brainless robbers did not listen to this at all, especially Canon. He only saw resistance. He thought that he was the master of these mudlegs, and these people should let him have whatever he wanted, instead of standing up and negotiating with him. So Canon felt that he needed to use blood to let these stupid and lowly mudlegs feel their power again. He was going to kill the man who stood up to negotiate with him. At this time, Arthur and his men arrived, and Arthur shot an arrow to save the man who tried to negotiate. There was nothing much to say next. Arthur brought 3 knights, while Canon had only 5 people in total. The fighting power was not proportional at all. In less than 2 minutes, Canon was the only one who escaped. The appearance of Arthur and his men gave all the villagers hope. Especially when Huna stood up and told the villagers that these people were invited by her from Camelot to help them, they were even more cheered. They felt that their village was finally saved. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55 Turning Point. Resistance has always been an extremely rare quality. Throughout human history, there are not many nations that possess this quality, at least in the West, it is very rare. In the entire Western history, it seems that except for Spartacus in ancient Rome, there are no stories of civilian uprisings against tyranny. In this regard, Chinese history is different. If you open Chinese history, you will find that our history is a history of working people resisting tyranny, and the change of dynasties is often due to peasant uprisings. I remember seeing this sentence somewhere. It is said that Western history is written by the Western elite, while Chinese history is written by thousands of working people who are willing to be kind. This can also be reflected in the myths and legends of both sides. The simplest comparison is that many heroes in ancient Chinese mythology were born in the grass, and even gods were cultivated by mortals. But what about the heroes in Western mythology? Most of them have inextricable connections with gods, and some are even directly descendants of gods and mortals. Demigods, there are many examples in this regard, so I won't explain them one by one, so as not to spoil the story. In short, although they were very happy that someone came to rescue them, after calming down, the villagers were more worried and afraid. Because Cannon was not dead, his gang still had more than 40 people. This was still a huge threat to the village. Some people were not even happy about the arrival of Arthur and his group. For example, Merlin's friend Will was very angry about the arrival of Arthur and his group. His reason was very simple: there would be no death if there was no resistance. Now that they had killed Cannon and his group, Arthur and his group could easily pat their butts and leave, but the villagers still had to stay and face the group of robbers. Originally, the robbers were just robbing, but now, the nature has changed. The villagers were also so worried. This was very difficult for Morgana to understand. There were hundreds of people in this village, of which only about 50 were men, and they were all strong laborers. Under such a level of productivity, no matter how good the physical fitness of the ancient Celts was, their average life expectancy was not high, so there were few elderly people and not many children, because they could not feed too many. Why didn't so many men resist? Even if there were only 20 or 30 people fighting, the robbers would be cautious. After all, robbery is a business without cost, and the robbers will subconsciously avoid any behavior that increases costs. This has nothing to do with whether the robbers have good brains. If the people in the village resisted, these robbers would not be so vicious as to even take away the grain seeds. Will's speech shocked Morgana even more. There are actually people who think this way. But Will's remarks are indeed very popular in the village, so the atmosphere in the village began to become weird. While they were grateful to Arthur and others, they also secretly blamed them. Arthur was very angry about this weird thinking, but for Merlin's sake, he didn't say much, but patiently told the villagers that they could stay until the robbers were eliminated. Such a guarantee made the people in the village feel relieved. However, considering that there were too many bandits, Arthur proposed that the men in the village be trained to resist the bandits together. The villagers reluctantly agreed to this request under the leadership of someone. But Will was still making sarcastic remarks. He thought that Arthur just wanted the villagers to play the soldier game with him. If Arthur was really willing to help them, he could have taken a large group of soldiers to wipe out the bandits instead of letting them fight with the bandits. Will was even dissatisfied with his friend. He thought Merlin had the ability to kill all the bandits by himself, so why didn't he take action? Why did he let the villagers resist? He could obviously finish the job, so why did he back off? Merlin couldn't refute this. But he insisted that Arthur didn't want to play any soldier games, he really wanted to help Elder. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come here. Neither side could convince the other. The situation in the village was not good either. Those men were honest farmers who had only held sickles in their lives and never swords. They also lacked the spirit of resistance and were afraid of the battles they were about to face. Arthur was helpless and powerless. He didn't know what to do. He now understood his father a little bit. When you are burdened with huge responsibilities, the pressure alone can make you unable to sleep or eat. He only needs to carry a village now, but what about his father? He needs to carry an entire kingdom. Just when Arthur was at a loss, someone stood up. They were two women. Morgana and Gwen. If you want to say who has the most rebellious spirit in Camelot, it must be Morgana. She couldn't accept the negative mentality of the villagers, so she began to lobby those women. It must be said that Morgana has a strong appeal. The women were motivated by her. They began to do what they could under Morgana's command. They helped to polish weapons, make arrows, cook, and help the men clean up. In short, she did everything she should and shouldn't do. It was to inspire those men. Gwen was Morgana's best assistant. She was born a commoner and had a natural closeness to the villagers of Elder. At the same time, her optimism and strength also set an example for women. After all, although Morgana is very good, she still has a strong sense of distance from those women. How can a princess and a peasant woman be the same? But Gwen has no such concerns. Spirit has always been an extremely important attribute. Spiritual changes can make people change drastically in a short period of time. At least, men, inspired by women, began to have the enthusiasm and courage to defend their homes. At this time, Arthur, under the guidance of Gwen, also cheered up and stood up to give a shocking speech, which made the people in the village burst out with infinite courage. As a prince who has received a strict education, it is not difficult to inspire morale. At the same time, Arthur began to have a good impression of Gwen, a strong and kind girl. Here, Will is the only one in the village who still can't stand Arthur, and everyone else is willing to accept Arthur's leadership. Part of the plot in the series is obviously promoting women's rights. I think it's a bit far-fetched, so I deleted it directly. There are too many political correctness in this drama. I didn't feel it when I watched it before, but now I watch it again. It makes people's brains hurt, after a period of simple training. The day of the arrival of the robbers has arrived. With the help of Knight Perriner, Arthur has formulated a fairly complete battle plan to meet the attack of the robbers. In fact, when things develop to this point, the fate of those robbers is almost foreseeable. These robbers are actually not a big deal at all. Under the leadership of Arthur and Perriner, the villagers used traps and their understanding of the terrain to catch the robbers off guard. Then 4 excellent genuine knights acted as sharp knives, and a group of villagers were involved on the side and played auxiliary. It was really not difficult to deal with a group of unorganized and undisciplined robbers. The main thing is to let the villagers overcome their fear of robbers. Once the villagers kill the robbers and see the blood, everything will be natural. The vast ocean of people's war is no joke. Originally, things had basically ended happily here. The bandits died, the villagers were rescued, and Arthur and his gang were satisfied with their sense of justice. But the problem came at the end. King Odin of Sendrid, who had originally refused to send troops, suddenly sent his son Ariel Terelder to fight the bandits. In this way, they met Arthur and his gang who had just defeated the bandits. Everything changed from here. Chapter 56 War. When Arthur and his companions returned to Camelot, they also received some bad news. The war was about to begin. When Arthur reported the news to King Uther with a frustrated look on his face, King Uther was completely stunned. He didn't quite understand why it had turned out like this. Before they set out, Kea had repeatedly warned them not to cause trouble, and to come back immediately after dealing with the robbers, and not to stay too long. King Uther had thought that everything had been said so clearly, and even if Arthur was impulsive, he wouldn't cause anything out of control. But the result? What on earth did you do, Arthur? Why did Sendrid start a war against Camelot? Tell me, what on earth is going on? King Uther asked with a dark face and gritted teeth. Arthur had completely lost his previous spirit at this time, and could only dejectedly tell them everything about defeating the robbers. Did it say before that King Sendrid sent his son Alier Terelder to suppress the bandits? That's where the problem lies. Arthur originally planned to leave Elder after a night's rest, but unfortunately, when they were about to leave the next morning, they happened to meet Prince Alier. In fact, things are not bad at this point. Arthur went to Elder in a private capacity, which was not considered crossing the line. And they also volunteered to help clean up a group of robbers. No matter how you look at it, Prince Alier would not blame Arthur and his party. In fact, Prince Alier was not an unreasonable person. He did thank Arthur and his friends for their help, and even offered to give them money as a reward. Everything seemed so peaceful. Unfortunately, in the middle of their conversation, Arthur accidentally ridiculed King Sendrid. In Arthur's opinion, this king was not qualified at all. His subjects were harassed by the bandits, but he, as a king, chose to stand by and refused to send troops to suppress the bandits. In addition, in order to eliminate this group of bandits, the villagers of Elder inevitably suffered casualties, and Arthur also blamed himself for this. Just then, he saw the people sent by King Sendrid, so he couldn't help but say a few bad words. Originally, this was nothing. If it was someone with a better temper, he might just pretend not to hear it. And Prince Alier seemed to be a good person, so Arthur didn't control his mouth. As a result, no one expected that Prince Alier was still a filial child. Although he felt sorry for what happened to Elder, he couldn't accept the ridicule of his father by a yellow-mouthed child. So the conflict happened. People in this era are very rude. They would never quarrel if they could fight. So the conflict quickly escalated into a duel. I don't know whether to blame Kai for training Arthur too well, or to be thankful for Kai's training of Arthur. Arthur easily won, but the bad thing was that Arthur also took Prince Alier's life. Out of respect for the knight's duel, the knights and soldiers who came with Prince Alier did not attack Arthur. But before they left, Prince Aluard's follower knights still issued a war notice, and King Sendred would never let it go. Because the deceased Prince Aluard was the eldest son of King Sendred and a most valued heir. King Uther looked at the dome mural above the hall speechlessly, and suddenly had the urge to strangle his stupid son. How stupid must one be to mock someone else's father in front of his own son? Kai had almost the same expression. He never thought that Arthur would end the bandit suppression in this way. He wanted to open Arthur's brain to see what was inside. He had repeatedly emphasized not to cause trouble, not to cause trouble. However, Kai also knew that it was meaningless to blame Arthur now. Could he and King Uther really send Arthur to King Sendred for disposal? To put it bluntly, other people's children will never die. Whether it was King Uther or Kai, they had no idea of killing their own relatives for the sake of justice, so now there was only one way. Your Majesty, I will rush to the border right now. Well, I will send an envoy to talk to Odin, if possible. In short, we must be prepared. King Uther was of course willing to resolve this incident peacefully, whether it was paying money or admitting his mistakes, or even accepting the cession of some land. But the problem is that King Uther knew very well that this matter was not that simple. Arthur, that bastard, killed the heir to the throne. If King Odin of Sendred could accept a peaceful solution, that would be a miracle. Anyway, King Uther believed that if this kind of thing happened to him, he would never accept a peaceful solution. Kai nodded and immediately turned around and walked out. He knew very well that now there was basically only one way out, which was to go to war. When passing by Arthur, Kai had to work hard to resist the urge to kick him. He just snorted at Arthur and rushed out. Even Morgana, Kai did not comfort him. So many people followed Arthur out, and no one persuaded him. What on earth do these people do for a living? Morgana wanted to say something to Kai, but seeing Kai's gloomy face, she couldn't say anything. Just when Camelot was in a panic because of Arthur's impulse, in an unknown cave, the witch Niwai who had appeared before was observing everything in Camelot with a crystal. When she saw Kai hurriedly leading a group of knights out of the city, Niwai finally smiled. Then Niwai's smile faded, and a gust of wind blew, and she disappeared in the cave, but the next second, Niwai appeared in a forest camp. Niwai's appearance was obviously beyond the expectations of the people in the camp, so a group of people held weapons and shouted while surrounding Niwai. But Niwai didn't care about these people at all, but watched their panic with interest. After a while, a man who was obviously the leader walked out of a tent in the camp. Seeing the mess in the camp, he immediately roared, "Calm down. You bunch of pigs. Everyone return to your posts. Now." Right now, following the man's order, everyone seemed to have a backbone, immediately regained their composure, and began to return to their respective places according to their duties. Only a few soldiers did not leave. They surrounded Niwai very responsibly and did not relax at all. The man walked to the edge of the encirclement and patted a soldier on the shoulder. "Don't be nervous, gentlemen. She is not an enemy. Go, do your own thing. I have something to discuss with this guest." The soldiers heard the leader's order. Although they were still suspicious, they still obediently put away their weapons and left, leaving only the man and Niwai standing there. "It seems that you have done well in your small business, Taolun." Niwai seemed to be very familiar with the leader of this camp. Not only was her tone familiar, but it was also mixed with a little sarcasm, especially the small business. The tone was emphasized, and it was obviously a bit contemptuous. "What are you doing here? Niwai, I remember you once said that you are not on the same side as us." The man named Taolun did not care about Niwai's sarcasm at all, but said it with great fear. Niwai is a great master of magic, with superb magic power, and is the only known inheritor of ancient magic in the world. She is very famous in the magic world, but as famous as her strength is her capriciousness and ruthlessness. It's not that no one has wanted to cooperate with this powerful witch over the years, but the results are not very good. Taolun once thought about cooperating with her. At that time, Taolun was desperate, so he couldn't care so much. Unfortunately, this witch didn't think highly of Taolun at all. Niwai did not comment on Taolun's question, but asked some irrelevant questions with interest. "How have you been recently? Are you still using your so-called alchemy to deceive people? How many people have been fooled?" Taolun's face immediately darkened. Alchemy is a relatively ancient discipline among magic disciplines. It is even said that the birth of alchemy is earlier than magic. The main goal of alchemy at its earliest birth was to transform base metals into precious metals, such as gold. Later, It developed into unrealistic research such as elixirs and panaceas. It is also because of its unrealistic purpose that alchemy has completely declined today, because successful cases are very rare, and it is even unknown whether it has been successful. Now, it is basically a trick of scammers. Talon is a descendant of alchemy, so his face was so ugly when facing Niwai's ridicule. Chapter 57 Cooperation. No. I'm almost there. Alchemy is not a trick, it is a truly feasible research. Only you mortals who are too arrogant will regard things that you can't do as impossible. The greatness of alchemy is to turn the impossible into possible. Wait, I will definitely use alchemy to make Uther pay the price. Talon's family has been studying alchemy for a long time, and Talon has an extraordinary belief in alchemy. By the way, it is also because of this that Talon's family was killed by King Uther. It's really miserable to say that they haven't researched anything for hundreds of years, and they were all destroyed by King Uther. It's frustrating to hear. Niwai raised her eyebrows, obviously not believing him, but it doesn't matter. She didn't come here to discuss this. She can complete the tricks of alchemy with magic, so why bother? Why wait? Do you mean to make King Uther pay the price by waiting for him to die of old age? How many years have you waited, Talon? 10 years? Or 20 years? Are you going to wait another 10 or even 20 years? Why not do it now? Talon's bold words were choked by these words. Yes, he did find the key to the success of alchemy, but the problem was that he himself didn't know how long it would take him to complete his research. Maybe tomorrow, maybe a lifetime. But soon, Talon was attracted by Niwai's last sentence. Do it now? What do you mean? Niwai didn't keep him in suspense, but said very happily, now is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. After that, Niwai looked at the surrounding camps with a little disdain and said, if you are willing, we can cooperate. If not, you can continue to be a mouse hiding like now. Talon would naturally not miss such an opportunity. He studied alchemy to kill King Uther and destroy Camelot. Not the other way around. Since he had the opportunity to fulfill his long-cherished wish, he certainly knew what to choose. Alchemy and the like can be studied slowly after destroying Camelot and killing King Uther. What kind of opportunity? Why did you choose me? I remember that you once ruthlessly rejected my request for cooperation. Why are you taking the initiative to find me now? However, after being the leader of the rebels for so many years, he still has some scheming. Although he is very tempted, he still wants to ask clearly before making plans. Niwai didn't care about Talon's caution. After all, being able to jump around under the siege of King Uther for so many years, caution is a necessary quality, otherwise he would have died long ago. Camelot and Sendard have broken out in war. Impossible. Uther has signed a contract with Sendard. They have been at peace for more than 10 years. How could a war suddenly break out? Talon's greatest wish in his life is to destroy the entire Camelot. Naturally, he would be particularly concerned about Camelot's information. Although his intelligence network in Camelot is not very strong, it is not weak to this extent. So when Niwai said that Camelot and Sendard had broken out in war, his first reaction was to disbelieve it. In order to deal with Camelot, Talon had thought about using foreign forces in recent years. But it didn't work at all. Camelot's own strength and King Uther's diplomatic skills made the countries around Camelot quite peaceful. But now Niwai suddenly told him that Camelot and Sendard had a war, and of course he didn't believe it. Indeed, under normal circumstances, they really can't have a war, but what if Prince Arthur killed Prince Arelide of Sendard? Talon immediately calmed down. If it was really as Niwai said, it would be possible. Killing a prince of a country is already a very serious matter, not to mention the heir to the king of a country. Is it your masterpiece that Uther's son killed Arelide? Although Talon didn't catch Niwai's eye, it didn't mean that he was really a mediocre person. On the contrary, this guy was very smart. It's just that Niwai, as a witch, looks at things differently from ordinary people. In Niwai's view, Talon is just a crappy wizard with 3 legs and a cat, and he studies useless alchemy all day long. Naturally, she looks down on him. But Talon was able to survive until now under King Uther's siege for so many years, so his own ability is naturally not bad. So he quickly realized why Niwai said that a war broke out between Camelot and Sendard. Yes. It's just a very simple little spell. Niwai didn't admit it. She did intervene in this incident. For some reasons, Arthur couldn't die at the hands of Niwai, so Niwai didn't attack Arthur at all, but cast a simple spell on Prince Aliard, another protagonist of the incident. to make his emotions a little unstable. Originally, Niue was planning to do something in the middle, but she didn't expect Arthur to be so cunning that he actually took the initiative to cause trouble, causing Prince Alyard to explode, and by the way, killing Prince Alyard. If you count it this way, she actually only made a little contribution, and the real hero was still Arthur. Talon didn't care about these, he only knew that Niue didn't need to lie. This kind of thing couldn't be concealed at all, just a little inquiry would tell the truth. So he had one last question left. Why choose me? Niue looked down on him, and Talon knew it clearly. I need manpower, and you have manpower. Niue was very frank. Talon didn't waste words, their goals were the same. So he didn't care that Niue used him at all. On the contrary, as long as he could kill King Uther and destroy Camelot, he was happy to be used. What do you need me to do? Niue smiled with satisfaction. I need you to help me get two things, one is a tomb under Camelot, and the other is the Naiad magic crystal. You? Talon looked at Niue in shock. Those things are just legends. I don't know their exact location at all. How can you let me get these two things? Talon himself is a Camelot. His family has lived in Camelot for hundreds of years. He has heard some of Camelot's secrets. He heard the legend of the underground tomb when he was very young. As for the Naiad magic crystal, it is even more well known. 20 years ago, in order to protect this magic crystal, I don't know how many wizards were killed by Uther. Although Talon didn't know what power this magic crystal had. But it couldn't be an ordinary thing that so many wizards desperately protected. Unfortunately, whether it was the underground mausoleum or the Naiad magic crystal, he only knew the above information, and didn't know anything else. This is exactly why I came to cooperate with you, Niue smiled confidently. Chapter 58 Dilemma. The attack of the kingdom of Sendrid came very quickly, and King Odin of Sendrid was furious. He did not even wait for the messenger of Camelot to explain the situation, and he sent troops directly. When Kai arrived at the border, the war broke out without any warning. If Kai had not secretly deployed the Knight of Lion at the border to ensure the safety of Arthur and others, Camelot might have suffered a great loss when it was caught off guard. But even so, Camelot had no choice but to retreat its defense line. There was no way, after all, no one planned to go to war with the kingdom of Sendrid. By the way, Elder had been destroyed. The day after Arthur killed Prince Aladri, Elder was destroyed by the angry nobles of the kingdom of Sendrid. Fortunately, after killing Aladri, Arthur and others expected that the revenge of the kingdom of Sendrid would come soon, so they persuaded the villagers to follow them back to Camelot, otherwise the hundreds of people in Elder would definitely be hanged by the angry nobles. But even so, more than a dozen villagers who were unwilling to move were hanged by the nobles. Kai had no intention of paying attention to such things. He could only organize troops to resist the attack of Sendrid while trying to find a way to end this trouble. He thought about contacting the nobles of the kingdom of Sendrid, hoping to reach an agreement with the king of Sendrid through them. After all, war is not good for anyone. Unfortunately, it was useless. King Odin of Sendrid was already crazy. He didn't listen to any advice at all and only wanted revenge. In this case, Kai could only bite the bullet and deal with the kingdom of Sendrid, hoping to end the war at the lowest cost. While Kai was in a mess, Camelot was not idle either. First of all, Arthur was thrown directly into the dungeon by King Uther. Of course, this was more of a show. King Uther had to give this attitude to make King Odin feel better. Once things took a turn for the better, King Uther would naturally let Arthur go, because Arthur was King Uther's only son. Although Morgana and the others were not thrown into prison, they did not have a good life. Morgana was confined to her house, and Merlin was whipped again by King Uther. The charge was that he did not persuade the prince. This time, he was whipped less, only 10 times. This was because King Uther was more reasonable. He knew that this matter could not really be blamed on Merlin, so he showed mercy. Merlin did not have any complaints this time. After all, this incident did happen because of his request. If it were not for him, Arthur would not have been able to go to Elder, and everything that happened afterwards would naturally be out of the question. Only Gwen-Gunny was unscathed. King Uther thought very simply. He did not think that a maid like Gunny could change anything. She could not fight, and she had no chance to give orders. She was a soy sauce party from beginning to end. King Uther did not even care about her, so she was the only one who was safe. It was also because of this that Gunny had more opportunities to contact Arthur. Morgana was under house arrest, So even though she was worried about Arthur's situation in the dungeon, she had no chance to visit him in person, so she asked the girl to take care of Arthur. Merlin had just received 10 lashes and was unable to take care of Arthur, so it was the girl's turn. Arthur blamed himself for his impulsiveness. Before he set out, Kay had told him many times not to make trouble and to come back immediately after dealing with the robbers, but he didn't expect, thinking that his momentary impulse would kill so many innocent lives, Arthur had the urge to commit suicide. Fortunately, the girl stayed by his side all the time, constantly encouraging him and persuading him, making him feel a little better. It was also this that made the relationship between the man and woman, who originally admired each other, quickly heat up. Well, it was because of the girl's understanding and lovely personality that Arthur completely ignored the girl's crooked mouth and the shortcomings of looking like a man. No, it should be said that in Arthur's eyes, this girl had no shortcomings and was very beautiful. Fortunately, Kai is not here, otherwise he would definitely find a doctor for him to treat his eyes, and perhaps his brain. Every time I see the rolling mother on TV, the author can think of his fifth uncle. No, the author's fifth uncle is at least much fairer than the rolling mother. Fortunately, although both parties have a good impression of each other, they are still sober and know that their identities are not compatible, so they did not express their feelings in their hearts, but just let it ferment slowly. Compared with the leisure of these people, King Uther will be overwhelmed. Fighting is not playing house. There are too many things involved. These things need to be dealt with by King Uther. Originally, Arthur could help him, but Arthur really handled this matter too badly. King Uther must teach him a lesson, otherwise this stupid son might cause him even bigger trouble. So these days, King Uther has become much more haggard. Now that the autumn harvest is about to come, the country can't mobilize many men to go to the battlefield at this time, and those mobilized men must be paid, and they must be paid in full and in excess. In an era of low productivity, the significance of autumn harvest is not just as simple as harvesting. It is related to the life and death of many civilian families and the stability of the country. The kingdom must not fool around with this. If it is not careful, there will be starvation everywhere and the whole country will be shaky. Therefore, the conscription of men must be cautious, and the salary must be generous. After all, many families rely on this salary to spend the whole year. But now the problem is that the country has no money. The kings in the feudal era were definitely not as rich as imagined. After all, most of the country's taxes were actually controlled by many nobles. The real kings did not have as much as imagined. Camelot was still good, at least it was rich, but no matter how rich it was, it could not withstand the consumption of war. In particular, many of the royal family's wealth was real estate such as land, houses, castles, shops, jewelry, and artworks, and there was really not much cash. Besides, the kingdom's annual budget was so much, and now it was before the autumn harvest. The original budget had been almost spent, and new taxes had to wait until after the autumn harvest. At this juncture, even Camelot could not come up with so much cash. So King Uther was so worried that he lost a lot of hair. Now when King Uther saw the gold and silver decorations in the palace, he had the urge to sell them. But the problem is not that simple. If they could be sold, they would have been sold long ago. If the royal family's property was sold at this time, it would alleviate the financial difficulties, but the consequences would be more serious. After all, doing so would undoubtedly tell the subjects that the royal family is already stretched to the limit. This is the most serious. Once such a thing happens, the morale of the people will undoubtedly be severely hit. The war has not been going on for long, and the royal family has no money. Is there any more serious blow than this? King Uther's mind is now full of money. And at this time, a piece of news reached King Uther's ears. There is a wizard's tomb under Camelot. It is said that the owner of the tomb is a wizard, the most powerful wizard in history, Cornelius Sagaon. There are countless treasures buried in his tomb. If those treasures are taken out, they can buy 3 entire kingdoms. Chapter 59, The King of Killers. King Uther certainly knew this legend, which had been circulating for hundreds of years. King Uther knew it when he was a child, but he never took it seriously. But now it has been spread in the market, and King Uther has also been interested. Moreover, King Uther is a little better than those outsiders, that is, he knows where the tomb is buried. This matter is recorded in a royal record. Although the words used are uncertain words such as possible, probably, and perhaps, at least there is a direction. In addition, King Uther was forced by money and had no choice, so he simply tried his best. Anyway, even if he couldn't find it, there would be no loss, but if he found it, he would make a lot of money. So King Uther immediately gathered people to start digging. It was at this time that several unfamiliar faces appeared in Camelot. They first wandered around the city for a few rounds, and then when King Uther gathered workers, they mixed in with the workers and started their own working life. At the same time, groups of foreigners who obviously did not belong to Camelot came to Camelot for the reason of seeking refuge. Although they looked honest, if you pay attention, you will find that although these people seem ordinary, they are actually very alert. No matter what they are doing, they will always pay attention to the surrounding movements, and they will also try to avoid meeting the soldiers in the city. These people entered Camelot in various identities. They seemed to have no connection with each other, but sometimes they gathered in twos and threes to chat for a few words, and then quickly separated. Originally, these special actions of these people could easily arouse the vigilance of the locals in Camelot. But during this period of time, more refugees poured into Camelot. These refugees came to Camelot for refuge because of the border war. These people were not very noticeable among the refugees, not to mention that the attention of the entire city was attracted by the war, and no one paid special attention to them. In this way, their existence has been ignored. The war is still going on. However, due to Kai's calm command, the situation was not bad. At least the offensive of Sendard was quickly contained at the border Asdal Ridge. Although Kai was only a platoon leader in his previous life and could not really be considered a commander, the wars of this era were not as complicated as modern wars, and Kai's military literacy was enough. In addition, Kai would also use some magic to assist in reconnaissance in private, which made him a famous general. With the support of Camelot, Kai fought more handily, which greatly frustrated the offensive of the kingdom of Sendard. Not only did he fail to open up the situation, but he was caught by Kai and suffered several defeats. This made Odin, the king of Sendard, feel extremely frustrated. He lost his son, his favorite son, and what was worse was that he had not been able to punish the murderer. Not only that, his army suffered huge losses. The pain of losing his son, the regret of suffering huge losses, and the urgency of revenge made Odin decide to take risks. Odin stood in front of his son's temporary coffin, looking sad. Allegory. Soon, justice will be served. No matter what the price, I will kill the murderer. I will. These days, Odin comes here every day to visit his son. This has become his habit. As for why it is a temporary coffin, Odin decided that he would not bury Alladri until he could avenge him. Just as King Odin was talking to himself, a knight pushed open the door in a dusty state. The knight was wearing ordinary casual clothes, and was covered in cold wind and dust. It was obvious that he had just returned from outside. Your Majesty. I found him. Odin did not turn around, still looking at his son's armor and helmet, and asked woodenly, where's he? He has arrived. The knight spoke and let a black bald man walk in. The black man looked ordinary, with round eyes that looked a bit honest. But this guy who looked like a farmer and a craftsman gave people an extremely cold and oppressive feeling. Even though the knights beside him were stronger than him, they still vigilantly grasped the long sword at their waist. The black man did not have any special reaction to this, but walked in very naturally. He looked around and took in the layout of the entire room and the positions of the knights. Finally, he cast his eyes on King Odin, who turned around. Odin was also looking at this killer who was famous in all countries. Are you merry? Legend has it that you are the most feared assassin in all countries. The black man looked at King Odin expressionlessly, without saying a word, but just shrugged his shoulders, looking very relaxed. Odin did not care about his rudeness, but continued to ask, tell me, are you as cold-blooded as the legend says, and can you kill anyone? The black man finally spoke. I have killed many people, and they are all the same to me. Their identities and deeds have no meaning to me. Hearing this, Odin finally breathed a sigh of relief. After all, the target he wanted to kill was not easy to deal with, but he still asked, are you ready to assassinate the royal family members? Mairui looked at Odin coldly and said without emotion, Your Majesty, if someone offered me a price to kill you, you would have been dead long ago? King Odin was stunned. He did not expect that the king of assassins in front of him would be so stunned. King Odin's knights beside him could not listen to it anymore. This guy didn't take them seriously at all. One of the knights, who was particularly tall and strong, was even more irritable and directly drew out the long sword at his waist. Unfortunately, his speed was still slow. At the moment he drew his sword, Myruhi came to him with a sidestep and hit him directly on the jaw with a palm. Without waiting for the knight to react, he kicked the knight in the head with a whip kick. This knight was obviously not a weakling. Even though his head was hit twice, he did not fall down. Instead, he slashed at Myruhi with a sword. Myruhi dodged the long sword and quickly stood up and hit the knight in the face with his elbow. At the same time, he grabbed the knight's sword hand with his other hand, twisted it back, and flipped the knight's whole body to the ground. Not only that, he also took the knight's long sword into his own hand without anyone seeing clearly. When the knight finally woke up from the dizziness, Myruhi had already held the long sword against his chest. The whole process took no more than 5 seconds, clean and neat. When he had finished the fight, the other knights had just come to their senses. After restraining the knight, Myruhi stared at Odin coldly. Odin was not panicked at all. Instead, he took out a bag of gold and threw it to Myruhi. Myruhi took the gold and weighed it. It was very heavy. I want you to help me kill two people. One is the murderer who killed my son, and the other is the first knight of Camelot. It has been almost 20 days since Arthur killed Odin's son Aladri, and the matter has been a hot topic. Of course, Mary knew about it. So at first Mary didn't think it was strange. Arthur was worth the price. But Odin's next target was different. Mary weighed the gold in his hand, shook his head, and was about to throw the gold back. This is not enough, but before he could throw the gold back, Odin said, this is a 10% deposit. Kill Kay and I'll give you 60%, kill Arthur and I'll give you the rest. Mary took back the gold in his hand. Okay. Chapter 60 Infiltration. The name of the Assassin King, Myruhi, is well known throughout the Celtic countries. Logically speaking, if an assassin becomes famous, he is basically not far from death. But Myruhi is an exception. This black brother is not only still alive, but also getting younger and younger. There is only one reason for this, that is, this person is really very strong. The title of Assassin King has never been said by himself, but by others. There is a saying that goes, there are wrong names, but there are never wrong nicknames. The black brother has been able to walk around the world for so many years and is still alive and kicking, relying on his superb hiding skills. Let's put it this way, as long as it's at night, as long as he doesn't open his mouth to show his big white teeth, others will want to see him even if they stand in front of him. Being an assassin, being able to fight is never the most important thing. After all, no matter how good you are at fighting, if you are surrounded by people, you can only be hacked to death, but Myruhi is different. As long as it's at night, no one can find him. So over the years, his reputation has become bigger and bigger, but he lives a very comfortable life. That's why Myruhi dared to take this business. You know, Kai has never been an unknown person. As early as 10 years ago, Kai became a champion knight at the age of 18. At that time, almost everyone thought that this kid would definitely achieve great things in the future. After Kai came back from traveling around the world for 10 years, his reputation became even louder. During this period when Kai came back, many knights challenged Kai, hoping to become famous overnight with the help of Kai's name. As a result, none of these challengers could last more than 3 minutes in Kai's hands. It was also because of this that Kai's reputation as the first knight of the countries has become more and more famous recently. Ordinary killers would not take on such a ruthless business. Because killing people is for money, who would go to die? What's more, Kai is a member of the royal family of Camelot. The business of assassins is shady anyway, so they are more careful when dealing with such a noble person as the royal family, because once something happens, the entire Celtic kingdom will kill them all. No kingdom can tolerate an assassin who kills the royal family. This is a provocation to the entire ruling class. Only Mary, the king of assassins, has the courage to do this, because Mary is confident in himself. He feels that he can kill Kai and can deal with the consequences. It is precisely because of this crazy self-confidence that Mary dares to accept the employment of King Odin. Odin's commission is absolutely crazy. He not only wants to kill Kai, but also wants to kill King Uther's only son Arthur. This is to make the Camelot royal family extinct. Arthur is the first heir to Camelot. Although Camelot has never clearly stated who is the second heir, Kai is the only choice in terms of ability and character. If Arthur really has problems, then Kai is very likely to become the heir. Many people actually know this, but King Odin intends to catch both heirs in one fell swoop. In this way, there will be no heir in the Camelot royal family who can convince the public and then the whole Camelot will fall into turmoil. This move can definitely be said to be cruel and ruthless, and it is also very taboo. And it is also an act that all major royal families try their best to crack down on and despise. We are all kings, who would like to be killed for no reason and have no descendants? Therefore, this commission was destined to be extraordinary from the beginning. Once successful, it will definitely cause a shock to the countries, and he, Mary, will be surrounded by the countries. If he didn't have some confidence, Mary would really not dare to take this business. In this war, Kai has been active at the forefront, so his command post was also set up in the border castle Katrinberg. This castle was originally built as a fortress for the war between Camelot and the kingdom of Sendard. However, after King Uther ascended the throne, he was committed to maintaining peace with the kingdom of Sendard. After years of efforts, Camelot and the kingdom of Sendard finally reached a peace agreement. In this way, this fortress originally used for war was abandoned and became a small border town. Unexpectedly, today, due to Arthur's impulse, this small border town that had accepted a peaceful life once again became a war fortress. It was also because this castle was used for war from the beginning, so the entire fortress was built to be extremely easy to defend and difficult to attack. In addition, Kai brought his army to station, which made this small fortress even more heavily defended. There were sentries almost every few steps, and the patrolling soldiers were almost non-stop day and night. In addition, there were various secret sentries. It was absolutely not an exaggeration to say that it was as solid as a rock. However, this was nothing in the eyes of the assassin king, Mary. He was an assassin, and his ability to make a living was to sneak into assassination. Ordinary guards were nothing to him. He hid under the city wall, waiting for the time for the guards on the city wall to change shifts. At the same time, he was memorizing the frequency of the mobile sentries on the city wall. He needed to start action when everyone was slack. He was like a stone that couldn't breathe, squatting at the bottom of the city wall without moving. Even though the soldiers above his head kept patrolling back and forth, no one found him. At 3 or 4 in the morning, Myrui suddenly opened his eyes. The time has come. Myrui, who was originally hidden in the shadow of the city wall, suddenly jumped onto the city wall. Yes, he jumped up. He stepped on the city wall a few steps, relying on the friction between his shoes and the city wall. He jumped to more than 4 meters high. Originally, when he got here, most people would fall down because they had no backing force, but Myrui climbed directly on the city wall with his bare hands. Just like a gecko. His fingers were tightly clasped in the narrow gaps between the stones of the city wall. With just this little bit of stamina, Myrui climbed up the city wall as quickly as if you were walking on flat ground. At this time, it was time to change shifts on the city wall. This was the darkest time of the night, and people were least alert. The soldiers on night watch were already exhausted, and it was time to change shifts. Their attention had long been focused on the warm tents, and they had no intention of paying attention to the surroundings. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Myrui quickly passed through the city wall silently. Not only was his speed fast, but there was no sound of footsteps. Those soldiers who were not focused enough could not have noticed that someone had just run past them. After entering the city, Myrui quickly moved towards Kai's location according to the information given by King Odin. Although he encountered patrolling soldiers several times during the period, Myrui relied on his amazing concealment skills to avoid danger. Soon, Myrui came to the top floor of the castle, Kai's temporary lounge. Chapter 61 Assassination failed. At this point, Myrui felt that the commission was basically half completed. What he had to consider now was how to escape from here without being discovered. If the target was found and killed, the entire Katlinberg would be in an emergency state, and it would be difficult to leave easily at that time. Yes, Myrui had never considered that he would fail. In his opinion, the most difficult part of assassinating an important person like Kai was how to pass the outer guard. Once he approached the target, everything would be doomed. Kai was indeed a strong opponent, but that was Kai when he was awake. Now Kai was still immersed in his dreams. If he wanted to kill him, he only needed a dagger, and there was no need to think so much. Myrui thought so and planned to do so. Kai's room was on the top floor of the castle. There was only one exit here, which was a corridor. It did not require many people to guard it, so only 2 soldiers were arranged at the entrance of the corridor. Myrui hid in the corner and observed secretly, and found that only through this corridor could he enter Kai's residence. As for the two soldiers, Mary found that they were in good spirits, and they should have just changed shifts. There was no obstruction at the entrance of the corridor, and if they wanted to sneak in, they had to be blind. So they had to use some extraordinary means. Thinking of this, Mary smiled and turned away. After a while, Mary found a servant's uniform from somewhere and put it on, and then walked over in a swagger. His expression was very natural, as if he walked into his own home, without any abnormality. In this way, Mary passed by the two guards with confidence. The two guards noticed Mary as soon as he came out, but they didn't react at first when they saw Mary's demeanor. They thought Mary was someone in the castle. When Mary approached, they realized that this was Sir Kay's room, and no one was allowed to pass at this time. When they were about to call Mary and ask him about it, Mary suddenly raised his finger and made a gesture of silence, and then he pointed to the room at the end of the corridor. The two guards saw it and immediately understood. He meant to keep his voice down. Sir Kay was asleep. The two guards didn't think too much about it. Instead, they felt that it was right. It was so late. It would be bad if they woke up Sir Kay. So they cooperated and kept their mouths shut. Then they asked Mary to come closer. They planned to ask quietly. If there was nothing wrong, they would let him go away. This is what Mary wanted. As a senior killer, he understood people's hearts very well. If he had just been aggressive or sneaky, the two guards would definitely call him loudly. After all, there was something fishy at first glance. On the contrary, if he walked out with a clear conscience, the two guards would never think that he was plotting something bad. After all, these soldiers had just arrived in this small town recently and were not familiar with the locals. In addition, Mary was dressed as a servant, so they naturally thought that Mary was a servant of the castle. Mary came to the two guards with a smile on his face. "What do you do?" one of the soldiers asked in a low voice. Mary deliberately glanced at the room at the end of the corridor, then waved to the two soldiers, indicating that they should come closer. The expression and the action were so natural that the two soldiers naturally didn't think too much and really approached. When the two soldiers' heads approached, Myrui waved his hands and slashed the two daggers across the soldiers' necks. Sudden attack. The two guards instinctively wanted to scream, but Myrui's move was fast and fierce. The daggers that just slashed their necks had already cut their vocal cords, and they didn't give them a chance to speak. After cutting the throats of the two men, Myrui immediately supported them very attentively and covered their mouths and noses with his hands to accelerate their death. In less than 10 seconds, suffocation caused accelerated bleeding, causing the two men to immediately fall into shock. At this point, shock and burping were actually no different. Anyway, there was no hope. As the hissing sound of blood spurting gradually became smaller, Myrui gently put the two men down without making any sound. After finishing the two men, Myrui did not leave immediately, but stood there and waited for a while. He was paying attention to the movement to see if anyone came over. Finding that the surroundings were still quiet, Myrui was satisfied and walked towards Kai's room quietly. The door of the room was easily opened. In this era, there were no such complicated door locks. Most of them were latch-type door locks. They could be opened with a dagger and prying a few times. Even a third-rate thief could do this, not to mention our assassin king. However, Myrui was different from ordinary thieves. He was not in a hurry to knock on the door, but was very slow. Because he knew that the strongest knight in the entire Celtic countries was sleeping in this room. If there was a loud noise, it would be very likely to wake him up. If he was discovered, he was not sure if he would have such an opportunity next time. So he would rather be slow and safe. Of course, this speed also depends on the target. With Myrui's reputation as the Assassin King, his skills are naturally not comparable to those of ordinary thieves. Even if he is slow, it will take only 5 seconds to pry open the door. Myrui held the door handle, gently lifted it up, and then slowly pushed the door open. This is to avoid making noise when opening the door. When the door slowly opened, Myrui quickly found his target. Myrui did not hesitate, and was not as cautious as before. Instead, he rushed to the bedside with one step, and stabbed the bulging quilt with his dagger. But the moment the dagger pierced the quilt, Myrui felt something was wrong. The feeling from the dagger was not right. That was not the feeling of the dagger piercing flesh and blood. There was no one under the quilt. Myrui immediately realized that he was exposed, and he immediately dropped the dagger in his hand and prepared to run away. Unfortunately, he was still a bit too late. He saw a long sword silently stretched out from under the bed, like cutting butter, and gently cut off Myrui's legs at the knees. Myrui was a tough guy, and he only screamed twice when his legs were cut off. He even planned to fight back, but unfortunately the severe pain had taken away his strength to resist, and his dagger could not touch the target at all. Myrui fell to the ground, and in the corner of his eyes, he saw a figure slowly crawling out from under the bed. That person was his target, Kai. Now he didn't know that others had discovered him a long time ago and were waiting for him to come. How did you find me? This is what Myrui couldn't understand the most. He thought he had done nothing wrong and it should be impossible for him to be discovered. Kai touched his nose and said contemptuously, "We shouldn't kill the soldiers at the door. The blood smell is too strong." However, before Myrui could say anything, he saw a foot appear in front of him, and then he fainted without knowing anything. Although Myrui fainted very quickly and was very tough, he finally screamed. In the dead of night, someone suddenly screamed. The noise was so abrupt. In addition, Kai's military management was always strict. Even the sentry was very strict in the early morning. The two screams quickly alarmed the guards downstairs. In less than a minute, a team of soldiers rushed over. When they arrived at Kai's room, they found Kai in pajamas holding a sword, and a black man who no one knew was lying on the ground. "It's the assassin, he's not dead yet. Take him away and stop the bleeding. Don't let him die. I want to see who wants to assassinate me." Kai didn't get angry when he saw someone coming. Instead, he explained calmly. The soldiers didn't have the same good psychological quality as Kai. They were almost scared to death when they saw someone assassinating Sir Kai. After all, they were responsible for guarding. If Sir Kai really died in the assassination, they knew what would happen to them. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62, Ominous Signs. Just when Kai began to interrogate the assassin, our Arthur began to get restless again. Arthur had been locked up in the dungeon for almost half a month. During this half-month, as the war progressed, whether Arthur was locked up or not became less and less significant. The war had come to this point, and Arthur's handling of it became a trivial matter. This matter had already turned from Arthur killing people at the beginning to a national war between the two countries. Could it be that if King Uther kept Arthur locked up, King Odin would feel better and then stop? In this case, King Uther was too lazy to pretend. He loved his own son, and King Uther believed that Arthur had been taught a lesson. In addition, the nobles had begun to plead for Arthur, so King Uther simply let him go. However, he was released and was limited to activities in Camelot. Although he loved his son, King Uther was also afraid that his unlucky son would cause trouble for him again. It was a pity that Arthur was the kind of person who followed the rules. Didn't King Uther forbid him to go to the front line? There won't be any problem for him to go hunting in the forest, right? So he dragged Merlin, whose wounds had almost healed, to the forest to hunt. King Uther originally didn't intend to let Arthur fool around, but seeing that Arthur had been locked up in the dungeon for half a month, he knew that he must be pent up, and there was nothing wrong with relaxing. He was so busy that he really had no time to take care of him, so he simply sent a few mature and steady knights to follow him, just to keep him out of trouble. But unfortunately, Arthur seemed to be born with the trait of getting into trouble, and he really got into trouble while hunting. I don't know how it happened, but Arthur woke up a monster while hunting. The monster woke up in the mist, and when it saw Arthur and his group, it began to attack them crazily. This monster is a huge monster with a snake head, a leopard belly, and a lion's buttocks, and it also has a pair of claws similar to deer and hares. When it runs fast, its abdominal cavity will emit the roar of more than 40 hounds. Although it is huge, it is not clumsy. On the contrary, it is extremely fast. Arthur and his group of more than a dozen people, all skilled warriors, but only 6 of them returned to Camelot alive. This is because the monster did not continue to chase after killing enough people, otherwise Arthur himself was not sure whether he could come back alive. This news is definitely a double whammy for Camelot. With the progress of the war, Camelot was already stretched to its limits, and now there are monsters causing trouble and killing people, which is definitely a bad year. When King Uther heard the news, he looked older. According to your description, it is very likely to be a water-seeking beast. For such an important event, King Uther naturally needed to brainstorm, so although it was night, King Uther still summoned the courtiers and Gaius to discuss. After listening to Arthur's narration, Gaius immediately thought of the origin of the monster. But that's just a legend, Arthur said, a little surprised. The legend of the water-seeking beast is not uncommon in the Celtic countries, and it is circulated in many places. Legend has it that the water-seeking beast is a monster that lives in the swamp. It is very strong and huge, and it runs very fast. It likes to live in the water. It can cause floods or spread plagues, and those who are injured by it will be incurable and will die. According to the records in the Elder Scrolls, the appearance of the water-seeking beast must be accompanied by something ominous. Gaius ignored Arthur. He has always been dissatisfied with Arthur's previous behavior. If it weren't for his impulsiveness, the situation in Camelot would not have become so bad, so he just said everything he knew. Unfortunately, Gaius's ominous things happened stimulated King Uther. He was most concerned about two things now. One was the war in front of him, and the second was Kay's safety. No matter which of these two things happened, he could not accept it, so he subconsciously denied Gaius's statement. Gaius. That's just superstition. This is also King Uther's current state of mind. Believe it or not, if Gaius said that the monster was a good omen, he would dare to send people to worship the monster. He couldn't stand bad words now. Arthur also disagreed with this statement. He had seen the monster. In his opinion, the monster was just a little scary, and he didn't see any special abilities. It was not as evil as Gaius said. Whatever it is, people are panicking now. People are afraid that it will break into the city, then we have to kill it, King Uther said firmly. Now that the situation has reached this point, he must make the strongest response, otherwise it will really cause social unrest, and then the soldiers on the front line will be unlucky. Arthur, gather the guards. Set off at dawn. Arthur naturally had no objection. On the contrary, he was almost sick from being idle. He really wanted to do something to make up for the trouble he had caused before. So he immediately took the order and retreated. At the signal of King Uther, all the other people in the room retreated, leaving only Gaius. Gaius waited until everyone had gone out before he spoke. Please, Your Majesty. Don't underestimate it. This monster is a bad omen. I've seen it before. It was the night Queen Igraine died. This sentence immediately touched King Uther's heart. He said angrily, I told you not to mention that night again. I have conquered the ancient magic, and its warnings have no effect on me. After a while, King Uther said after his emotions eased a little, Arthur will kill the monster, and we will not be hurt by it again. After saying that, he ignored Gaius and turned away. On the other side, Kai's interrogation of the killer also yielded results. Kai was shocked when he got the report. Wow! He actually caught a big fish, the assassin King Mary. This title is terrifying. What's even more chilling is that this assassination was ordered by King Odin. But when Kai got this confession, he was not panicked but surprised. It's really a pillow when you're sleepy. There's hope to calm the war now. Why? Because King Odin broke the rules. The unspoken rules among the Celtic countries strictly prohibit assassinating the other party's royal family. Although this is an unspoken rule, its effectiveness is very strong. No kingdom can tolerate such a despicable method. Of course, whether it is despicable or not is nonsense. The key is that if everyone does this, can the royal families of various countries still have fun? So all countries are very taboo about this. Now King Odin has taken the lead in coming up with such a despicable method, which gives Kai a reason. He can use this to negotiate conditions directly with King Odin, either withdraw troops to maintain peace, or just be straightforward and hurt each other. Isn't it just hiring a killer? Who is afraid of whom? Do you, King Odin, have more money than Camelot? If you pay to assassinate me, I dare to pay double to deal with you. At that time, don't say that I don't care, it's you who broke the rules first. Thinking of this, Kai immediately stood up and took the order himself. Call all knights. Let's go to King Odin to ask for an explanation. Chapter 63 Negotiation. It seems ridiculous to ask the king of an enemy country for an explanation, but it is quite normal in the special environment of the Celtic countries. Because if you really want to talk about it in detail, in fact, the royal families and nobles of each country are all relatives. This is a bit like Britain and Germany before World War I, although the two countries had been at odds for a long time before the war. If you count carefully, the royal blood relationship between the two countries is really close. The German emperor and the British king are cousins, and even the British royal family itself has a German surname. The relationship between the Celtic countries is even closer. This also leads to the fact that some unspoken rules are very binding, because everyone is a family in plain words. If there are no rules, it will really be a mess. So once King Odin does something that the noble rules cannot tolerate, Kai is fully qualified to bring the knights to him to ask for an explanation. And King Odin must come out and make it clear. Although it is really a bit funny, it is the fact. This is also the reason why Kai only summoned the knights, because those soldiers can't get involved in such things. Soon Kai's request was handed to King Odin. But when King Odin saw Mary's confession, he was in a bad mood. Did he agree to be the king of assassins? How could he be so bad? He had no professional ethics and was caught, but he didn't even protect the privacy of his customers. Bad review. But complaining about Mary is useless now. Kai has already spread the news to most of the nobles in the kingdom of Senderd. Unless King Odin wants to lose the support of all the nobles, he must deal with Kai. What's more, this matter also involves the assassination of Arthur. This crime is more serious than assassinating Kai. Although Kai is also a prince, he is the adopted son of King Uther. According to the rules of the nobility, his status is naturally lower than Arthur. If King Odin broke through Camelot in an upright manner, found Arthur, and then killed him in public, no one would say anything. But now he is assassinating. In a society where chivalry is extremely prevalent, this practice is extremely despised. What's more, it involves royal succession, which is likely to attract the intervention of royal families of other countries. In short, King Odin wanted to avenge his son before, and he naturally had an advantage in the public opinion of the nobles. Who can stop a father from avenging his son? So although the nobles of the kingdom of Senderd did not want to go to war, they had nothing to say under the righteousness. But now King Odin made a bad move, which turned the public opinion around. He was right before, but now he is wrong. This made many nobles who supported King Odin almost vomit blood. This is not a way to play. Isn't this a scam? So we have so many people dead, and you are ruining us like this? So the support King Odin received suddenly decreased a lot. In this year, the royal family is just the leader of the nobles. If the royal family is really useless, it is not surprising that the nobles will ignore the royal family. Now Odin is at a loss. Kai soon saw Odin. He didn't say anything, but just threw the broken-legged Mary in front of King Odin and looked at King Odin. This is embarrassing. King Odin wanted to argue, but the problem was that he was caught red-handed. Not only was Mary caught, but Mary also told exactly who found him, where they traded, and what they said. There was no room for argument. Seeing Mary, who was already half dead, King Odin knew that he had to give an explanation. What do you want? Uther and I are very sad about what happened to Alliard, and we prayed to you for peace with a most sincere attitude. But you refused, and we have nothing to say about this. So although war is not what we want, at this point, we can only fight. But, Kai pointed to the bald killer on the ground and said coldly, this behavior has violated the tacit understanding between the royal families and has brought shame to all the nobles. King Odin was so angry that his teeth were almost broken when he heard this. He thought Kai was humiliating him. However, in view of your experience, we don't intend to pursue it. No one expected Kai to say this suddenly, and they were all stunned. Without waiting for everyone to react, Kai drew out the long sword from his waist and beheaded Marui with one sword. We believe this is a misunderstanding, and we are willing to preserve your honor and dignity. Killing the witness with one sword basically destroyed half of the evidence. This made the nobles of the kingdom of Senderd present feel relieved. No matter what, the royal family is the leader. Once the reputation of the leader is bad, the nobles under them will not be well off. Now Kai is willing to let this matter go, not only giving face to King Odin, but also giving face to the nobles of the entire kingdom of Senderd. Seeing Kai give up the pursuit of the assassination so neatly, King Odin was stunned for a while, and then the whole person's energy and spirit seemed to be sucked away. He sat on the throne weakly and said in a dry voice, "What do you want? Peace." Kai did not intend to let King Odin lose face, because it would not be good for Camelot. After all, if King Odin really loses face, it may lead to worse results. Once King Odin abandons all the unspoken rules and fights Camelot to the death, Camelot will not feel good. What about my Ariel? What about the justice he should get? King Odin naturally didn't want to let it go. Although this was the best result, King Odin couldn't get over it. Ariel died in the duel. He didn't lose his glory. Kai disagreed with this statement. Indeed, King Odin was miserable, but don't forget that Prince Ariel died in a duel with Arthur, and it was Ariel who took the initiative to initiate the duel, so there's nothing to say. If this reason had been before the assassination, it would have been a little untenable. After all, like Arthur, Prince Ariel had been canonized. He was no longer just a knight. He was the heir to the royal family, and his identity could no longer be simply defined as a knight. But now it is different. King Odin has lost points, and now this reason is completely tenable. Of course, Kai was still willing to give King Odin a chance. The casualties caused by this war are enough. If you are still unwilling to give up, then I propose to end this war in the most glorious way, a knight duel. If we lose, we will pay 100,000 gold coins to your country and cede borderland in exchange for peace. If we win, then you only need to pay 50,000 gold coins to us, and then both sides will retreat to the border in front of the station and make peace. This condition is already good enough. In fact, it is Kai who made a huge concession. After all, everyone can see the war situation clearly. Camelot undoubtedly has an advantage. If it were not for the domestic production, Kai could have summoned more troops to advance to the kingdom of Sendard. Under this advantage, Kai chose to end the war with a knight duel, which undoubtedly gave the kingdom of Sendard a huge favor. After all, if it was a knight duel, the two sides would have stood on the same starting line. All the nobles of the kingdom of Sendard looked at King Odin, and they also agreed with such a proposal. Kai gave up the pursuit of assassination against King Odin at the beginning, which showed great goodwill to the kingdom of Sendard. Now that an obviously preferential proposal was made to end the war, they could not think of any reason to refuse. Chapter 64 1v5. In the Celtic countries where the spirit of chivalry is extremely prevalent, the status of knight duels is very sacred. When a war ends with a knight duel, both sides of the war can accept it. After all, although it is a bit of a joke, the loss caused is the smallest. A knight duel will kill at most a few knights, while the casualties caused by the war are tens of thousands. Comparing the two, you can figure out which one is more cost-effective. If it weren't for the king's face, the nobles of Sendard would have agreed long ago. Unfortunately, all this needs to wait for the king's decision. Although the king is just the leader, it is very rude for the nobles to make decisions without the king in public, and it will be despised by all countries and the entire aristocracy. So the nobles can only worry. How could King Odin not feel the thoughts of his nobles? His prestige has fallen to the lowest point since the start of this war. He started the war, but the war was a mess under his command. It can be said that he was beaten black and blue by the young man on the opposite side. If Camelot did not have too many troops, the war should have ended long ago. That's why King Odin wanted to assassinate Kai. Originally, although King Odin's prestige had declined, it would not make the nobles under him so rebellious. After all, it was not King Odin's responsibility that the war had turned out like this. But if he used such a mean means as assassination and was discovered, it was really King Odin's responsibility alone. This dealt a great blow to King Odin's prestige. The war had already reached this point, and the nobles could not see any hope of victory. It would be better to stop the loss in time. Now Kai had given such a good condition, and he had given it all. It would be better to take advantage of the situation. King Odin closed his eyes and felt a sense of sadness. He, the lord of a country, could not even avenge his son. However, after all, he had been a king for so many years, and he still had the political qualities he should have. He knew that this war could no longer be fought. At this point, if he continued to act on his own, he would only face a greater defeat. The nobles in the country had begun to waver. If he ignored their wishes now, he would only completely lose the support of the nobles. Okay. I agree. But I have a request. Although the withdrawal of troops and peace talks are a foregone conclusion, thinking of his son's tragic death, King Odin decided to be willful. He had to make King Uther pay something, otherwise his son's death would be too aggrieved. You say, since King Odin agreed to stop the war and make peace, Kai was relieved. As for King Odin's request, Kai didn't have any big ideas. At this point, King Odin's request could not be too excessive. After all, this matter has become a foregone conclusion. I have heard of your reputation. Aren't you known as the first knight of all countries? Then prove it to me. I will send 5 knights, and you can only fight alone. As soon as King Odin made this request, both the knights of Camelot and the nobles of Sendard were in an uproar. This was asking Kai to fight 1 against 5. This was too unfair. But soon, the nobles of Sendard quieted down. Although King Odin's request was a bit excessive, King Odin had lost his crown prince. King Odin was already miserable. Why didn't he allow people to vent? Besides, this matter was a shame for the entire kingdom of Sendard. They were naturally dissatisfied with Camelot. If possible, they would like to see Camelot suffer. So they shut up consciously. At most, they would take a step back when Camelot protested. Anyway, it was impossible for them to make concessions on their own initiative. The Knights of Camelot were very dissatisfied with this. Many people began to clamor for the war to continue. Camelot would not accept such an impolite request. Anyway, they had the upper hands in the war. At most, they would continue to fight and let people from other countries take a good look at Sendard's face. But Kai did not speak, but tilted his head and thought about something. After about 2 minutes, Kai raised his palm. All the Knights of Camelot fell silent. As soon as the order was given, everyone followed it. The nobles of Sendard looked at each other in bewilderment. This kind of power is not common among the countries. From this, we can see how high Kai's prestige is in Camelot. I can promise, before Kai finished speaking, the knights behind him immediately went crazy and prepared to persuade him, but Kai raised his palm again. Immediately, everyone could only return to their original positions helplessly, not daring to say a word. King Odin was amazed by this. You know, even he, the king, may not have the prestige of Kai in his own country. But I have a condition. When King Odin saw this scene, he felt inexplicably empty in his heart. Say it, if I win, your compensation needs to be doubled, 50,000 to 100,000. King Odin's face changed. As for the compensation of 50,000 gold coins, Odin could pay it with a grit of teeth, but 100,000 gold coins. As mentioned before, the royal families of various countries don't have much cash in hand nowadays. For the compensation of 100,000 gold coins, King Odin can only sell some royal property. But considering the huge advantage of 5 to 1, King Odin didn't want to refuse. After all, if he didn't dare to accept the 5 to 1, then Sendard would become a big joke tomorrow. Okay, King Odin said this with gritted teeth. These days, there is no such thing as a contract written in black and white. What matters is a reputation. King Odin agreed in front of so many knights and nobles, so he has no room for regret. Otherwise, let's not talk about what will happen to Camelot. The knights and nobles in his country will take the initiative to ask King Odin to fulfill his promise, because this is not only related to King Odin's reputation, but also to the honor of everyone present. They are witnesses. If one party fails to fulfill its responsibilities, then they have the obligation to ensure fair execution. Although people of this age are rude and backward, they are also lovable. Then I will decide the competition items. Is that okay? This is as it should be. King Odin has a great advantage with 5 against 1. If he pushes further, it would be too ungentlemanly. Okay, King Odin will naturally not make things difficult for Kai because of this issue. That would be too ungraceful. Kai had already thought about it. If he wanted to fight 1 against 5 without being too out of line, the best way would be the lance competition, horse spear competition, in the knights competition. It is that 2 knights charge at each other with huge cork lances. This competition method is considered the safest event in the Celtic Knights competition, with the lowest mortality rate. Moreover, this event is a one-on-one competition between 2 knights. It is impossible to let 5 knights go together, so they only have to face one enemy at a time. But just when Kai was about to propose the competition items, suddenly a Camelot knight came from a distance and ran to Kai's ear and said something. Kai's face changed drastically when he heard this, and he immediately turned to King Odin and said, I don't think we need to go through so much trouble. Let's use the simplest event to decide the winner, a knight duel. I'll go 1 against 5, let them come together. Upon hearing this, the center camp immediately started cursing. This was simply a naked insult. Chapter 65, Power Outage, please take leave. Chapter 65 The power went out. Asking for leave. The power went out while I was typing, just now. I called the power supply department, and they said it was a power outage. I don't know when the power will come back. I guess it's hopeless tonight. All the documents are on the computer, and typing on the claw machine is too slow, so I have to ask for leave today. If the call comes before 12 o'clock, maybe I can send it, but if not, I can only apologize. Chapter 66 Arthur's Accident. Facing such a provocation from Kai, any man would not be able to bear it, not to mention King Odin, who was already full of resentment. So the 1 versus 5 duel started soon. But unlike what Sendard had imagined, this duel that seemed to have a huge advantage ended quickly. and ended in a miserable defeat. Less than 5 minutes after the 5 knights of Sendard fought with Kai, 3 of them were killed on the spot. 1 knight was kicked in the head by Kai and fainted, and the last knight's hand was cut off by Kai at the shoulder, and he was unable to fight again. The duel ended with Kai's overwhelming victory. When Kai put away his double swords and walked away from the duel site, King Odin and his nobles still couldn't come back to their senses for a long time. What can they say? 5 against 1 can't beat them, what else can they say? In the end, this world still respects strength. Others gave them a chance, 5 against 1. But they themselves are not up to the task. In short, Kai just whizzed away with his men without even saying hello, leaving King Odin and his nobles in the wind. Lion, Kai returned to Katrinburg very quickly. As soon as he entered the fortress, Kai called his adjutant Knight Lion over. During this period of time, you stay in Katrinburg and pay attention to what is happening on the side of Sendard. Although the chances of them going back on their word are not high, you should also pay attention to it. In addition, you should also urge the compensation from Sendard. We need the money now. Kai walked towards his room and explained to Lion, who followed closely behind him. Understood. Although Lion didn't understand why Kai was so anxious, he still obeyed the order. It was not until Kai returned to his room and packed up his gifts that Lion couldn't help asking, "Sir Kai, what happened?" Kai simply packed up his gifts and threw them to his attendants, and then asked them to go down to prepare horses and some necessary things, and they would return to Camelot immediately. After the attendants went down, Kai said to Lion with a gloomy face, "Something happened to Arthur." Something really happened to Arthur. Didn't King Uther order Arthur to hunt the water-seeking beast before? Arthur really took people there, and soon found the water-seeking beast. Unfortunately, they found it, but the result was not good. Arthur was seriously injured. The water-seeking beast has a characteristic, that is, anyone injured by it will die. Although Arthur finally killed the water-seeking beast, Arthur was seriously injured and unconscious on the spot. When he was sent back to Camelot, he was already dying. King Uther collapsed on the spot and cried while holding Arthur. This may be the first time King Uther cried in front of people in all these years. But no one would make fun of King Uther for this. After all, it is definitely a tragedy for the old to send the young to their deaths. Kai also had to rush back immediately because of this news. Around noon on the 3rd day, Kai, who had been traveling day and night, finally returned to Camelot. Kai, who rushed back, did not greet anyone and went straight to Arthur's room. Arthur was lying on the bed, unconscious with bandages on his body, and sweating continuously, as if he had been fished out of the water. Seeing this, Kai heaved a sigh of relief. Although Arthur was unconscious, his body was still twitching slightly, which meant that he had not died no matter what. The people in the room finally saw Kai at this time. King Uther, who was sitting beside Arthur's bed, was the first to react. This iron-fisted king, who was known for his toughness, had become a helpless old man at this time. He looked haggard. When he saw Kai, King Uther was startled at first, and then tears flowed down. He stood up tremblingly and stretched out his hands to Kai. Kai took a step forward and hugged Uther tightly, repeating in his mouth, "It's okay, it's okay, Arthur will be fine, I promise." Perhaps it was Kai's return that gave Uther support, allowing the originally anxious King Uther to finally calm down a little. He held Kai's shoulders, looked at Kai seriously, and said solemnly, "Why did you come back so soon? How is the war going? No, you can't leave your post, you have to go back to the front line immediately. That's where you should stay. We are here. Go now and go back immediately." King Uther was of course relieved that Kai could come back immediately, but for Camelot now, the war with Sendard was the most important thing. Now Arthur was dying, and the people in the city were already panicking. If something happened on the front line again, then... In short, although King Uther wanted his other child to accompany him very much, he had to make a choice for the future of Camelot. Emperors are like this. Their choices are always subject to many, many things. It is impossible and they will not act according to personal feelings. Unless they are a tyrant, that's another matter. Kai shook his head and said, "No need, the matter on the front line has been resolved. Sendard has decided to withdraw and pay us 100,000 gold coins." King Uther thought he had heard it wrong at first, and then Kai repeated it again. King Uther asked in disbelief, "Is this true? Do I have to lie?" Kai left King Uther alone after he finished speaking. He came directly to Arthur's side and touched Arthur's forehead with his hand. He found that his body was incredibly hot, at least 42 degrees. Then Kai opened Arthur's bandage and found that the injured part had turned black and was accompanied by a faint sour smell, which was very similar to the symptoms of infection. He gently pressed the wound, and a stream of slightly yellow transparent liquid flowed out. This was tissue fluid with purulent secretions. Judging from the color, the infection was better than Kai had expected. This was obviously the work of Gaius, otherwise the situation would not be so good. After observing the situation, Kai looked up and asked Gaius, "How is the situation?" Gaius shook his head in embarrassment. "It's not good. Although I have tried my best to treat Arthur's wound and prevent it from getting infected, the effect is not good. The wound is still getting worse. This is not the worst. The real problem is the magic on it. I can't do anything. As long as the magic power is not removed, Arthur's condition will get worse day by day." The water-seeking beast is a product of ancient magic. According to legend, the water-seeking beast is a monster born from the soil by powerful magic, so it is not surprising that there is magic power on the wound caused by it. King Uther also came over at this time. Although he knew that Kai was not a pharmacist, out of trust in Kai, he still placed his last hope on Kai. "Kai, do you have a solution?" Unexpectedly, Kai gave King Uther a reassuring smile in an unusually relaxed manner, and then said, "Although I am not very sure. There is indeed a way." As he said that, Kai took out a transparent glass bottle from his bag. In the glass bottle was a golden potion that no one had ever seen. "This is a potion I got from a place called Olympus. It is a liquid extracted from a special plant called the golden apple. Although it cannot be said to cure all diseases, it is indeed very effective for many wounds." Kai did not lie. This is indeed a potion from Olympus, but the effect is 10 times stronger than what Kai said. This thing not only cures all diseases, but also prolongs life. In order to get this thing, Kai fought with a poisonous dragon with 100 heads for 3 days and 3 nights. In the end, if it were not for the secret help of Hera, the Queen of Olympus, Kai might not have been able to get this thing. The golden apple itself was eaten by Kai, leaving only this little residue, which was made into several potions by Kai. This is one of them, which is used to save lives. Hearing what Kai said, King Uther immediately became excited. At this time, he did not consider whether this thing had anything to do with magic. In fact, even if it did, he would not care. His son was like this, how could he care about this thing? Chapter 67 Treatment. King Uther didn't care about anything now, just kept asking Kai to give Arthur medicine. Of course Kai would not be stingy with a bottle of medicine for his brother. If he really needed it, he could go to Olympus to get it. Although that place was a bit far and dangerous, it was not difficult with Hera and Athena as his insiders. The most important thing was to make sure Zeus didn't find out. The old guy had always been resentful because Kai gave him a hat. Although Arthur was in a coma with a high fever, his basic instincts were still there and he was able to drink the medicine. After taking a bottle of medicine, the effect was immediate. Arthur's convulsions stopped immediately and his body temperature dropped. Although he still had a low fever, it was not dangerous. Seeing that Arthur was getting better, King Uther immediately asked repeatedly, "Is he better? Is he better? Is he better?" Kai shook his head. "How can it be that fast? It will take at least half a month for the medicine to work well before he can recover. It's okay if it can be cured. It's okay if it can be cured." King Uther fell down before he finished speaking. Fortunately, Kai was quick to catch him and prevent him from falling. Gaius immediately rushed to King Uther and examined him. "It's okay, just tired. There have been too many things going on recently. In addition, I was very sad these 2 days, and now I feel relieved. I can't hold on any longer. I will prescribe some soothing potion for your majesty. It should be fine after a few days of rest." That's good, that's good." Kai breathed a sigh of relief. Arthur's matter has not been resolved here. If King Uther falls again, it will be a mess. Morgana, go take care of Uther. I'll trouble you to take charge of the overall situation in the palace in the next few days. I have a lot of things to deal with on the front line, so I have to rush back immediately. Kai called a few knights to help King Uther, and then he called Morgana to his side and explained. I'm afraid I can't do it well. You can actually stay." Morgana had never seen such a scene before. After all, she was just the adopted daughter of King Uther. Although she had a good reputation, her ability was not convincing enough. But Kai was different. He had a high prestige in Camelot, and everyone knew that he was very capable. In addition, he defeated Sendrid so quickly, and his reputation was at its highest. At this time, It was definitely the best choice for him to come out and take charge of the overall situation. The front line needs me more. Now Sendard has just failed. If they get bad news about Arthur and Uther, they will inevitably have other thoughts. I can only guard the border to prevent them from coming back. Besides, things are not that difficult. You have learned a lot when Uther handled affairs. Besides, it will only be a few days. It will be fine after Uther recovers. You don't have to be afraid. There shouldn't be any moths on the side of the Sendard kingdom. After all, they were defeated by themselves without any dispute in the public eye. Unless they don't want any face at all, they will not break their promise. In this day and age, what is more important than face between countries? Kai wanted to leave at this time, and naturally he had his own intentions. So we can only ask Morgana for help. Morgana finally took King Uther away, and only Merlin and Gaius were left in the room. Gaius waited until everyone left before carefully asking, "Kai, is your medicine really effective?" Gaius could see that Kai had some reservations just now, otherwise he would not have been so eager to let Morgana take King Uther away, and even drove everyone else out. Kai rubbed his face hard with both hands to make himself a little more awake. He had been traveling for more than 30 hours in a row, and he was already very tired due to the fear and worry along the way. He could only use this method to cheer himself up. If only it were that easy, Kai said in a muffled voice. Merlin immediately said in surprise, "Did you lie to them? Did the medicine just now work?" Kai shook his head. "It does work, but it's not as good as I thought. I didn't expect this water-seeking beast to be so powerful. The golden apple's medicinal effect can't do anything to it. The golden apple can keep the Olympian gods young forever. It is definitely a good thing." When Kai gave the core of the golden apple to the Asgardians, they were very knowledgeable and almost knelt down before Kai. In Norse mythology, there is also a legend similar to the golden apple. The goddess of youth in Norse mythology is responsible for the golden apple that can keep the gods young, but such a powerful thing can't do anything to the wound caused by the water-seeking beast. You can imagine how difficult this monster is to deal with. Kai used to think that compared with the ancient Egyptian, Asgard, Olympus, Sumer and other civilizations, the ancient Celtic civilization is just a younger brother. No matter from which aspect, it can't be compared with the previous civilizations. It's just a rural place. But unexpectedly, he still underestimated this small place. For example, this water-seeking beast, even if it is placed in other civilized areas, it is a top monster. At least its toxicity is stronger than the poisonous dragon guarding the golden apple. But doesn't Arthur look much better? How can it be ineffective? Merlin said a little unbelievably. Alice, this is just an illusion. Arthur is now completely relying on the vitality provided by the golden apple. When the vitality brought by the golden apple disappears, what will happen to Arthur? What will happen to him? Arthur's current condition can't be considered improved at all. At most, it can only be considered as a forced extension of life. When the injury worsens, he will die. Okay, let's not talk about this. Since the golden apple's useless, the other things Kai prepared should naturally have no effect, so Kai can only think of other ways. Fortunately, he knows that someone must know how to solve this problem. Merlin, yes, sir. Merlin was a little stunned at first, and when Kai called his name, he immediately came back to his senses. Arthur has been like this for 2 or 3 days. Have you asked the dragon for a solution? At this time, Kai was too lazy to avoid suspicion. Sure enough, Gaius immediately stared at Merlin. He never liked Merlin to contact the dragon. Merlin felt uncomfortable being stared at by Gaius, but he had to answer Kai's question. I did look for him. Gaius was about to say something, and Merlin also shrank back, waiting for Gaius's reprimand. But before Gaius could speak, Kai stopped Gaius. It's time now, don't say those useless words. Merlin, just tell me the answer, time is running out, saving Arthur is the most important thing. Kai was not interested in listening to Gaius's lecture on his apprentice. In his opinion, nothing could compare to the safety of his brother. It was just contact with magic, so what? As long as it was not used in front of King Uther, I believe King Uther would turn a blind eye. Merlin glanced at Gaius carefully, and Gaius had no choice but to glare at Merlin unhappily, and then turned his head away. Obviously acquiescence. The dragon said that the water-seeking beast was born from ancient magic, so it is also subject to the control of ancient magic. If you want to save Arthur, you must use ancient magic as well. Hearing this, Gaius, who had just expressed his non-interference, couldn't help but speak again. But ancient magic disappeared hundreds of years ago? No. The dragon said that there are still people who can use it now, Merlin immediately retorted. He asked me to go to a place called the Blessed Island, where you can still feel the power of ancient magic. There you can find the antidote to save Arthur. Chapter 68 Troubled Times. No, when Merlin mentioned the Blessed Island, Gaius interrupted Merlin's words with great excitement. Merlin looked at Gaius blankly, and then asked hesitantly, "Do you know the Blessed Island?" Kai also looked at Gaius. Gaius looked at Merlin, then looked at Kai, and didn't know how to start. Seeing this scene, Kai immediately said firmly, "Gaius, I need you to tell me everything you know." His attitude was very firm. Gaius sighed and made a final effort. "It is said that it is the birthplace of ancient magic and the source of its power. It is too dangerous, but that is our only chance, Gaius. I can't watch my brother die like this. I must find an antidote for him. Tell me everything, Gaius. I don't want to repeat the importance of Arthur." Kai didn't care about Gaius's persuasion, but said very calmly, "So what are you going to do? Save Arthur? The water-seeking beast has found Arthur, which means that the ancient magic has determined his fate. So you mean for me to watch Arthur die on the bed like this? And then pretend nothing happened? You know me, Gaius, I can't do it." Kai shook his head irritably. He didn't want to hear these things. As a young man of New China who grew up under the red flag, Kai himself sneered at things like so-called fate. Naturally, it was impossible to accept this so-called fate. Besides, if there really was such a thing as fate, Arthur would not die. He was destined to be the man who became the King of Great Britain. Besides, if there really was such a fate, I would also convince those sons of bitches to change their minds. Kai emphasized the word convince, and it was obvious that his persuasion was not intended to rely on words. Gaius felt like a scholar meeting a soldier, and he couldn't make sense, but he could understand Kai's persistence. After all, he didn't want to see Arthur die. He was just doing his duty. But it's not easy. Ancient magic has the ability to reverse life and death, but it requires a price. For one person to live, one person must die. Kai, I beg you, based on Gai's understanding of Kai, if it really comes to that, Kai is very likely to sacrifice himself to save Arthur. Kai is a person who values responsibility and feelings more than life, otherwise he would not insist on saving Arthur when he can legitimately inherit the kingdom without doing anything. You know, even if he does nothing, no one can blame him. If Arthur dies, he will be the biggest beneficiary. Even the most determined royalists cannot blame Kai for this. After all, if it really comes to that, Kai inheriting the throne of Camelot is the best solution. Camelot is now facing internal and external troubles. If there is no powerful person to suppress it, it may collapse at any time. Even for their own interests, those nobles will hold their noses and tolerate Kai becoming king. But Kai is not tempted, but wants to save Arthur. This era doesn't have the twists and turns of those treacherous heroes in ancient China. What is what it is, pure and lovely. There is no doubt that Kai is just playing a trick, and he is treacherous but loyal. Fortunately, Kai is really not interested in the position of king. After all, he came from the great celestial empire. Camelot is only the size of a county-level city. Being a king is equivalent to being a county magistrate. What's the point of being a king? No need to say, "I have decided." You just need to tell me where the Blessed Island is. Kai rejected Gaius's persuasion again. Faced with Kai's decision, Gaius could only shut up. This is a man who is more stubborn than King Uther. Once he decides on something, there is no possibility of regret. Thinking of this, Gaius could only sigh and feel upset about his experience. The royal family he served was basically like this. Whether it was King Uther, Arthur or even Morgana, they were all as stubborn as Kai. Gaius was silent for almost 3 minutes, and finally calmed down. But just as he was about to talk about the situation of the Blessed Island in detail, a bell suddenly rang outside. The bell was not loud, but it was extremely urgent. This was the alarm bell inside the palace. When the bell rang, it meant that there were suspicious elements inside the palace. "Protect Arthur, don't leave here, I'll go to His Majesty." Hearing the bell, Kai immediately picked up his weapon and rushed out. He was afraid that someone would harm Arthur and Uther. Arthur's place was okay. After all, there were not only guards guarding the door, but also Merlin inside his insurance, so it was not too dangerous. But it was different for King Uther. He only had Morgana guard in there. After Merlin and Gaius looked at each other for a few seconds, the two immediately took action. They first asked the guards at the door to guard it, then locked the door, and took out the staff and long sword, ready at any time. Kai soon came to King Uther's room and found that although the room was heavily guarded, there was nothing unusual. It was obvious that the intruder who startled the bell had not been here. The knights and guards at the door saw Kai and immediately saluted, then made way for Kai to enter the king's room. But Kai did not go in immediately, but asked, "What happened? Why did the alarm ring?" A knight stood up and answered honestly, "We don't know either. We just came to protect the king after hearing the alarm. As for what happened in the palace, we haven't had time to find out, then send someone to find out immediately," Kai said and entered the king's bedroom. Everything was normal in the room. King Uther had just finished drinking the medicine and had fallen asleep. The noise outside did not wake him up. It seemed that this man was really tired recently. Seeing Kai come in, Morgana, who had been guarding King Uther, immediately rushed over and hugged Kai. Even a strong man like King Uther was exhausted by the recent series of changes, let alone Morgana. She had more worries and fears than anyone else, but she was afraid of burdening others, so she shouldered everything by herself. Now Kai is finally back, and she has someone to rely on. Holding Morgana's trembling body, Kai felt a bitterness in his heart. To say Kai's feelings for Morgana, in fact, there is not much love, but more of a kind of family affection. After all, Kai's mental age can be Morgana's grandfather. It's really a bit difficult for Kai to love her like a young man. For Morgana, Kai is more of a pity. This little girl's life experience is too tragic. She is thoughtful and strong-willed. So don't look at her arguing about this and that every day. In fact, she is not feeling well. Okay, don't be afraid, it's okay, I'm here. Everything will be fine. Morgana is smarter than anyone else. In fact, Kai doesn't need to say a lot of things, she can understand. She doesn't need those long-winded explanations, she just needs a harbor so that she can have a good rest. Kai didn't know if he was a good man, but at least he could do his best to treat her well and not let her suffer any injustice. Morgana soon calmed down, but she didn't want to leave Kai's arms. The two of them hugged each other tightly, and they didn't know how long it took until there was a knock on the door, and they separated. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69 Talon. Knight Perriner knocked on the door and came in with several other knights. These knights were more or less stained with blood. They also brought a man in civilian clothes. There was a wound on the man's leg. The wound was not big, but it went through the thigh. It was obviously pierced by a long sword. Kai looked at King Uther, who was still sleeping soundly, and felt that it was not a good idea to interrogate him here, so he told Morgana and led the people out of the king's bedroom. Knight Yabangzi was also helpless. He would not have come in earlier. Now that he came in, he had to retreat again. It was really. Who is he? Kai didn't have time to find a place to ask slowly, but asked directly outside the room. He's from the rebel Torin. Knight Perriner was also an old knight and had dealt with the rebels a lot. He still recognized some of the rebel members. Torin. Kai hadn't heard this name for a long time. Torin was declared a rebel about 10 years ago. This guy is very good at playing tricks. Although he is not a big threat, he has been wandering around Camelot for many years and would cause trouble to King Uther from time to time. He is a rare rebel who can hold out against King Uther for so many years. However, in recent years, Camelot's life has been getting better and better, and Torin's life is not as carefree as before. Because of King Uther's propaganda, Torin's image among the people is not good, which also leads to Torin's activity area becoming narrower and narrower. When Kai came back, Camelot had not heard of him for 3 years. Many people thought that this guy had died in some mountain ravine. Unexpectedly, he jumped out now. What are these people doing in the palace? Did they hurt anyone? Kai was surprised and not surprised at the appearance of this group of people. He was surprised because he didn't expect that this group of guys still existed. It was also simple not to be surprised. Camelot was in a mess now. It would be strange if these rebels didn't come out to cause trouble. These days, King Uther repeatedly transferred troops to support the front line, which led to the lack of manpower in Camelot. In addition, in order to encircle and suppress the water-seeking beast, King Uther even transferred the palace guards, so the defense of the palace was also empty, which gave these guys an opportunity. "They are here to steal this thing," Paranor said, and took out a fist-sized white crystal and handed it to Kai. Naiad magic crystal. Kai knew this thing. This thing was hidden in the deepest part of the palace by King Uther, and no one was allowed to mention it. Even Kai never saw it again after seeing it once. In order to seize this Naiad magic crystal, King Uther sacrificed hundreds of knights and thousands of elite soldiers, so Kai was deeply impressed by this thing. King Uther actually didn't know what this thing was for, but he knew that the wizards were very nervous about this crystal, so he took it at all costs and vowed never to let the wizards get it again. "Whatever the enemy needs, we must attack." King Uther didn't understand those messed up things, but he understood human nature. "Since the Naiad magic crystal is so important, then I will make sure that the wizard never gets it. Even if that thing is of no use to King Uther, as long as it can strike the enemy, he will do it." Kai took the crystal and carefully sensed the energy on it. He found that the energy inside was very strange. It was obviously very powerful, but Kai couldn't call on the power on it. It seems that only Celtic wizards know how to use the power on it. Kai is not frustrated. Kai is more interested in why Talon wants this thing. Kai still knows Talon's information clearly. Although this guy knows a little witchcraft, he is actually a half-baked person. His spell level is not high. This guy has been studying alchemy all his life. As we all know, alchemy is some scammer's tricks and is not a serious spell at all. Why does such a person want the Naiad magic crystal? Does he understand it? "Can you tell me why Talon wants this Naiad magic crystal?" Kai came to the captured man with the crystal and asked in a friendly manner. "I think it's better for you to tell me. You know, I haven't slept for 3 days. I'm very tired now, so my temper is very bad. If you are willing to cooperate, everyone will be happy, but if you... I really don't mind telling you what cruelty is." The captured guy was obviously a die-hard fan of Talon, otherwise he would not have been sent to perform such an important mission, so even if he was injured and captured, he remained silent. However, Kai didn't think that things could be figured out so easily. As he said, he was really irritable these 2 days. First, he fought with Sendrid. It was not easy for Sendrid to stop fighting. Arthur had problems again. Arthur's problems have not been solved yet. King Uther was overworked. It can be said that he is now full of lawsuits, so it is inevitable that he will be a little rough. Fortunately, in this world, no one will bother him because of human rights issues, so no one will say anything if he is a little cruel. Since this guy won't talk, let the torturers in the dungeon come and deal with him. In feudal society, torture was not as gentle as in modern society. Basically, it was as cruel and painful as possible. There were no restrictions at all, and it was entirely up to the torturer's imagination. So being a tough guy in this era is definitely a challenging job. Many people think they can definitely withstand torture before being tortured, but in fact, there are very few tough guys who can really withstand those cruel torture methods. This guy is no exception. Kai just took a 2-hour nap. The guy confessed. He doesn't know much. He only knows that Talon wanted the thing just to make a deal with a woman. As for the specifics of the deal, he doesn't know. Perino gave a brief account of the information obtained from the torture. This Torin is very cautious. The things that the captured idiot knows are what Torin wants him to know. He doesn't know anything else. Even Torin's camp was moved after he left. Now it's impossible for us to find Torin's camp by following the clues. Torin, this guy is nothing. Let's put it aside for now. This Torin himself is nothing. To Camelot, he is just a jumping clown. He can't make much waves. Moreover, this guy can still be alive and kicking under King Uther's siege for more than 10 years. Naturally, he has his own tricks. It's not easy to catch his tail. Kai is more concerned about the woman who made a deal with Torin. Does he know more about that woman? Paranor shook his head. He only saw the woman from a distance and didn't know anything at all, don't remember any characteristics. Somehow, Kai felt a little familiar with this woman. Although this feeling made no sense. Characteristics. He did say a little. But I don't think it's useful, Paranor said hesitantly. What did he say? Kai asked curiously. Black hair, red dress. That's all the information I have, Perino shrugged. These two characteristics mean nothing. There are many women who meet these two characteristics. But Kai didn't think so, because he had already guessed who wanted the Naiad crystal. After all, they had just met not long ago. Chapter 70 Blessed Island. The Blessed Island is very far from Camelot. If you ride day and night, it will take at least 10 days to go back and forth. So Kai set off with Merlin early the next morning. Although Kai is very confident in himself, after all, the place he is going to is the birthplace of ancient magic. Who knows what strange things there will be there, so it is very necessary to bring a wizard. Kai is not afraid of danger, but Arthur can't wait. So Merlin was taken by Kai this time. The two of them rode on horses day and night to the southwest of Camelot, passing through the Fallen King Canyon of Mount Pictou and reaching the north of the Melder Sea. This journey is not to mention the 9981 difficulties, but it is not peaceful. In this era, leaving the human settlement area is basically all poor mountains and bad waters. Wild beasts and poisonous insects are numerous, plus some inexplicable magical creatures, which also made Merlin, a young man who has not seen much of the world, suffer a lot. This is also thanks to Kai's rich experience in survival in the wild, otherwise Merlin probably won't be able to get there in this lifetime. Finally, the two of them found a big lake in the north of the Melder Sea, passing through a forest that was dark and foggy all year round. The weather here seems to be always rainy, either raining or foggy, and if you are not careful, you may get lost at any time. But fortunately, although this place looks gloomy, it is not dangerous. Kai didn't even see a living creature in the forest. According to Gaius's description, the Blessed Island is in the center of this lake. After searching along the lake, Kai and his friends finally found a dilapidated small port in a reed marsh, and a small boat was docked in the small port. But what annoyed Kai was that there was a boat, but no oars. In the end, Merlin took action and used the magic that Kai didn't know about to make the boat move automatically. Although the power of Celtic magic is not worth mentioning in Kai's opinion, it is at least much worse than the magic in other places that Kai has seen. For example, the spells used by the tough guys in Asgard are very powerful, with sparks and lightning every time they fight. Another example is Gilgamesh's Treasure of the King. Every time the battle starts, it is like an artillery position. After boom, boom, the opponent will be dead without a complete body. But Celtic magic is not without advantages. For example, in some details, Celtic magic is very useful. Seriously speaking, Celtic magic is more home-based and not amazing in battle. Of course, this may be Kai's prejudice. After all, he himself has not seen the essence of Celtic magic, because before Kai saw these things, King Uther pushed the magic flat. Now, those wizards have become rare animals. They are rarely seen. Merlin is a wizard, but unfortunately he is only half-baked. He learned magic by himself from Gaius's magic book. He knows some spells, but he has no theory at all. Sometimes Kai even doubts whether such a half-baked wizard can really become a great wizard in the future. Riding on the boat controlled by Merlin, the two of them went to the center of the lake. Not to mention, this lake is not small. With the speed of Merlin controlling the boat, it took Kai and his friends half a day to find an island. It is better to say that it is a castle built in the water than an island. The whole castle appears abruptly on the lake, and there is no trace of land around it. Kai and Merlin walked into the castle through a small door outside the castle. The castle is quite old at first glance. The style is very old, and many places are severely weathered. There is no sign of people in the castle. It is obviously abandoned for a long time, and even the cracks in the stones are full of grass. Stand here and don't move. I'll go up and take a look. Kai's heart was cold at this time. There were no people in this ghost place, not even ghosts. Where could he find the antidote? Wait. Sir Kai, before Kai could take a step, Merlin suddenly grabbed Kai. I can feel that something is attracting me. Follow me. I know where to go. After saying that, regardless of whether Kai agreed or not, he took the lead and walked out. Kai had no better way. Now he could only trust Merlin. He was not familiar with Celtic magic at all. Although Merlin was a half-baked person, he was also an expert in this field. Now he could only listen to him. Following Merlin, Kai finally came to the courtyard of the castle after many twists and turns. As soon as he arrived at the courtyard, he saw a clear view in front of him. Although this place was as dilapidated as other places, the grass and trees here were obviously taken care of by someone, and they did not grow wildly like other places. Walking along the stone path in the courtyard and passing through an unknown flower garden, Kai and his friends came to the center of the courtyard, where there was a huge stone circle, and in the center of the huge stone circle was an altar. Kai held two swords and remained alert. This ghost place was full of a weird atmosphere, which gave Kai a very bad feeling. Hello? Is anyone there? Kai was still cautious, but was startled by Merlin's greeting. It was obviously quiet around here, But Merlin suddenly said something that was not only abrupt, but also very ruined the atmosphere. Kai turned his head and was about to scold this unlucky child, but Kai stopped halfway through his turn. "Hello, Kai? Oh, and our little Merlin, hello." Kai breathed a sigh of relief and turned around slowly. At the edge of the altar, the witch Niwi was already standing there with a smile. "Hi, Niwi. I didn't expect that we would meet again." Kai tried his best to relax himself and not be so nervous. Merlin looked at Niwi, who suddenly appeared, and was also shocked. He knew this woman. It was not long after he came to Camelot. This woman had sneaked into Camelot. At that time, Camelot and another great country, the Kingdom of Mercia, finally ushered in peace after years of hegemony. The King of Mercia brought people to Camelot to prepare to sign a treaty with King Uther. At that time, this woman pretended to be a maid and lurked in the Mercian delegation. She wanted to poison Arthur at that time, but was discovered by Merlin. At that time, Merlin drank the poison wine to prove that someone really poisoned him, and almost died. If Arthur hadn't gone through untold hardships to find an antidote for Merlin, Merlin would probably not be seen now. By the way, our little brother Merlin almost fell in love with Niwi, but he was dumped by someone before his first love even started. Seeing Merlin looking at her in surprise, Niwi was not angry, but winked at Merlin very playfully. Merlin immediately lowered his head in fear. That relationship was too embarrassing, and Merlin didn't want others to know at all. Kai was confused. "Do you two know each other?" "Of course," Niwi said. "No," Merlin said. Chapter 71 Transaction. Seeing Merlin's attempt to cover up his mistake, Kai would not believe him even if he was a fool. So he simply looked at Niwi. Niwi was very generous and did not hide their past at all. Although little Merlin is also very good, but I still like older men. For example, someone like Kai, who looks mature and stable, is my favorite type. She even threw a wink to Kai. Kai was already immune to this. Like all older aunts, Niwi also liked to tease young men. It was not that she really had any ideas, but she simply thought it was interesting. Maybe she wanted to find a little of her past youth in young people? But who cares? Kai didn't care much about this kind of teasing anyway. In addition, in his previous life, Kai was already in his 60s, almost 70 years old, so of course he had no reaction to this kind of bad taste. But Kai still couldn't help but glance at Merlin and said earnestly, "Although I have no right to say such things, Merlin, she is not suitable for you. Let me put it this way, when I first saw her 20 years ago, she looked like this, and now 20 years have passed, she still looks like this, you should understand, right?" Merlin's face suddenly turned pale, and his body was shaky. When he thought that he fell in love with an old lady who was at least in her 50s, he had an urge to die. No. She can't be the person mentioned by the dragon. Seeing Merlin like this, Kai felt a little sympathetic to him. Although Kai also understood that first love is mostly blind. Falling in love with an old lady in her 50s, this is no longer blind, it is simply blind. Why? Kai didn't understand what Merlin said, but Niwi seemed to know it very well, and asked back with interest. "You once wanted to kill me." Merlin once heard the dragon say that his fate had been determined, and he would assist Arthur to become the king of Great Britain. They would create a great era, an era of magic returning. If Niwi is really the heir of ancient magic, then she must know this prophecy. Any wizard who knows this prophecy will not take the initiative to hurt Merlin. This is why Merlin wanted to come here alone to seek the antidote, because in his opinion, Arthur is the destined person, and the descendants of ancient magic will never sit idly by and watch Arthur die. After all, this is related to the prosperity of magic again. When saying this, Merlin's eyes were a little tearful. Kai didn't know what others thought, anyway, he never liked this kind of man with tearful eyes, but it seemed that Niwi liked this. Niwi looked at Merlin now, as if she saw a little puppy on the side of the road. "That's because I didn't understand your importance before. As for Arthur, Arthur's life will not be ended by me. Now it seems that I seem to be his savior." Although Kai didn't know what happened in the middle, he guessed from the conversation between the two that it seemed that Arthur couldn't die. In this case, Kai decided not to speak for the time being and see how it would develop next. Merlin could naturally hear it, and he hurriedly said, "So you already know our request." Of course, Niwi was still the same. Kai had always felt that this woman was very similar to Fox. She always had a smile on her face, but she always gave people a sense of danger and cunning. Of course, Kai never said this. It was not that he was cowardly, but that he was polite and respected his elders. Really? Then you will save him, right? Unfortunately, I lack something as a price. Kai was originally watching the show, but when Niwa said this, she looked at Kai, so Merlin also looked over. Kai scratched his face and said with a wry smile, "It seems that you have been paying attention to the palace." Niwa did not speak, and still looked at Kai quietly. Kai put away his smile and said bitterly, "Do you really want to do this? I don't want to kill you one day. Everything is over, isn't it? Why are you still holding on to the past after 20 years? It was Merlin's turn to be surprised. Although he had just known that Kai knew Niwa, Merlin now realized that the relationship between Kai and Niwa was deeper than he thought. Niwa finally put away the smile that always hung on her face and said with gritted teeth, "Let it go? Why not Uther let it go? For 20 years, he has been hunting down my kind all the time. If he is really wrong about that incident, then he is not wrong." Kai really has no way to answer this question. King Uther's personality is like this, easily emotional and prone to extremes. He is the kind of person who is difficult to recover once he gets angry. He thinks that magic killed his queen, so he wants to completely destroy all magic. He is very unreasonable. If Kai was not raised by King Uther, he might have risen up. Damn him. But the problem is that he is King Uther's adopted son, who raised him since childhood. King Uther treated him even better than his own son. People are always made of flesh and blood. What can he do? Go against his adoptive father for those wizards? That's impossible. Seeing Kai speechless, Niwa also put away the ferocity on her face. The grudge between Uther and me will only end when one side is completely defeated. Now, we only talk about the deal, not other things. I don't want to talk to you about this. Niwa didn't plan to argue with Kai anymore. It was impossible for Kai to betray King Uther and come to her camp, and she couldn't give up the hatred in her heart. It was useless to say more. Kai didn't speak, and didn't know what to say. After hesitating for a long time, Kai finally took out a white transparent crystal from the bag on his waist. Long before coming to the Blessed Island, Kai had a vague feeling that Talon would send people to the palace to steal the Naiad magic crystal, and Niwa were related. After all, the woman in the thief's confession had too many similarities with Niwa. So when leaving Camelot, Kai took the Naiad crystal with him. Now that Niwa was asking him for a price, Kai naturally thought of the Naiad crystal. And Niwa's next expression also confirmed this. She was obviously very eager for this crystal. When she saw the crystal, she immediately stepped forward and wanted to take it in her hands. But just when her hands were about to touch the crystal, Kai suddenly took the crystal back. Niwa was stunned immediately, and she looked up at Kai. Kai had a complicated expression, and did not speak, but stretched out a hand. His meaning was very clear, one hand paid the money, and the other hand delivered the goods. Niwa shook her head with emotion, obviously understanding what Kai meant. Unexpectedly, in the end, they became like this. Kai has never regarded Niwa as an enemy, and the friendship they had in the past has always been there. But now it is different. Niwa wants to get the Naiad crystal not because she wants a crystal ornament, but because she wants to do something with this crystal with powerful power. Kai can think of what she wants to do with this thing without having to think about it. Although Kai didn't know what the crystal was used for, he didn't need to know. He only needed to know that for the sake of the crystal, whether it was the many wizards who risked their lives to protect the crystal in the past 20 years, or Niwa's current deliberate plot, all showed the importance of the crystal from the side. When Niwa got the crystal, it would inevitably pose a huge threat to Camelot, and he and Niwa would become real enemies. Chapter 72 Fight. Niwa shook her head and stopped talking. She just held her hands up to her heart, and a ball of blue-white light burst out from her hands. The light went from dark to bright, and finally it was so bright that people couldn't open their eyes. But soon the light dimmed, and Niwa had a gorgeous golden cup in her hands. She handed the cup to Kai. This is the Holy Grail of life. For thousands of years, this Holy Grail has been blessed by powerful magic, so it contains the secret of life. As long as Arthur drinks the holy water in it, he can be reborn from the dead. Kai took a look at the Holy Grail of life and did not take it over. Instead, he shook his head and said, "I don't trust you. Tell me how to use the Holy Grail, and I will do it myself." Niwa said with a little sarcasm, "You change your attitude so quickly. You just said that you don't want to be my enemy, but now you start to be on guard against me. I'm sorry, but from the moment you must get the Naiad magic crystal, we have become enemies." This is related to Arthur's life. I have to be cautious. Kai did not feel embarrassed. He has never been a sentimental person. Since they are destined to be enemies, Kai will not be vague about the precautions that should be taken. Besides, Kai knows Niwai's weirdness best. If he doesn't do this, who knows what trouble will happen later. Faced with Kai's frankness, Niwai has nothing to say. So Niwai grabbed the void with her left hand, and a scroll appeared in her hand. Then Niwai handed the scroll and the Holy Grail to Kai. And Kai also handed the crystal to Niwai. After getting the Holy Grail, Kai immediately opened the scroll to study the use of the Holy Grail. Niwai did not do anything about it. Not only that, she even gave Kai the use and method of using the Holy Grail. From this point of view, Niwai did not lie before. Niwai was also checking the authenticity of the Nihide magic crystal. Of course, Kai did not cheat. After checking, Niwai breathed a sigh of relief. After so much effort, she finally got this treasure. The only thing left was the tomb under Camelot. Once the things in the tomb were released, the end of King Uther would come. Thinking of this, Niwai looked at Merlin again. She was very curious why fate had revealed to her and gave her the power to destroy Camelot. But she still emphasized that the little guy in front of her and Arthur could not die. However, Niwai immediately put this question aside. Fate is unpredictable and no one can fully control it. Anyway, she has nothing to do with these two little guys, and she doesn't care about them. Then, Niwai turned her attention back to Kai. She found that Kai was still reading the scroll, as if he was studying the secrets in it. But Niwai was not in a hurry, because she knew that there would be more fun to watch later. But this time, she miscalculated. After a long time, Kai raised his head. He looked at Niwai with a complicated expression. You lied to me, Niwai. I thought that we had at least the most basic trust between us. But you still lied to me. Oh? Where did I lie to you? But Niwai didn't change her expression. This scroll tells me that if I want to use the Holy Grail, I must pay a price. If one person lives, one person must die. But just now I was told that the price you paid to save Arthur is the Nihide magic crystal. Ni smiled. She smiled and said, You are wrong, I didn't lie to you. As she said that, she pointed to the Holy Grail of life. The Nihide magic crystal is exchanged for the Holy Grail of life. The Holy Grail of life can indeed save Arthur. As for the price of the Holy Grail of life, it has nothing to do with me. Kai looked at Niwai intently, and finally smiled. Word games will not work with me. Niwai did not care about Kai's threat, but asked confidently, Then what can you do? In Niwai's view, the Nihide magic crystal was already in hand, and Kai no longer had the right to bargain. Kai had no choice. She was more interested in who Kai was willing to sacrifice in order to save Arthur. According to the rules of the Holy Grail, Kai could only sacrifice himself or someone close to him. The exchange principle of the Holy Grail was very strict, and it was not possible to just find someone who had nothing to do with him. What is the price? It is the material, energy, or sacrifices spent to achieve a certain goal. The focus is on the person who pays the price. Things that do not belong to you cannot be called a price. Yet, what choice do I have? Kai shrugged very frankly. He knew that if he wanted to save Arthur, he had to pay a price. This was inevitable. But that doesn't mean Kai will just swallow his anger. But I can make you gain nothing. Merlin disappeared from the beginning of the conversation between Niwai and Kai, and has been a little transparent on the side. Niwai has not paid much attention to this little guy from beginning to end, but when Kai called out his name, Niwai felt bad. Unfortunately, it was too late. When Kai called out Merlin's name, Merlin cast the spell he had been planning for a long time. Merlin's eyes emitted a golden glimmer, and the Nihide crystal in Niwai's hand was pulled away by a huge force. Niwai was just about to take back the crystal, and Kai on the other side had already rushed in front of Niwai, and two long swords slashed at Niwai's chest and abdomen in a cross shape. Niwai could feel the dragon breath on the two swords. Even if she was hit by these two dragon breath long swords, she would be in danger. So there was no way, she could only concentrate on blocking Kai's attack. The pupils of Niwai's eyes emitted a trace of red light, and a transparent protective shield blocked the front of the two swords. Dang, there was nothing in front of the two swords, but the two swords made a sound of metal colliding as if they were slashing on iron. Niwai had just resisted Kai's attack, and Merlin immediately launched an attack on Niwai after putting away the Nihide magic crystal. He first used the magic force field to push Niwai away, so that she could not hit the spirit to resist Kai's attack. The moment the protective shield laid by Niwai disappeared, Kai immediately took this opportunity to attack Niwai continuously, so that she could not deal with his and Merlin's attacks at the same time. Under Kai's continuous attack, Niwai had no time to take care of him, and Merlin immediately recited his strongest spell, which was an enchantment spell that could make the weapon have an indestructible power. Merlin had just learned it not long ago and had never used it in actual combat. Bregdan and Wilgefaluk. This spell appears in the 5th episode of the 1st season of Merlin, when Lancelot killed the griffin. Merlin used this spell. As the spell was completed, the light blue magic light enveloped Kai's sword. With the blessing of this powerful spell, the power of Kai's double swords increased exponentially. Niwai's defense could not withstand the power of this spell at all, and she was quickly beaten back. Her spell seemed so weak and pale under Kai's double swords. Originally, according to her strength, as long as she was given a chance, she could easily break Merlin's spell. Unfortunately, Kai's attack speed was too fast. The double swords were swung like a storm, and the offensive was higher and higher, leaving Niwai no chance to breathe. To make matters worse, when Niwai was in a mess, Merlin hit her with a club again. Merlin didn't know many magic tricks, most of which were magic tricks. They were fine for playing pranks, but it was a bit ridiculous to use them against enemies. However, it was such a spell that made a great magic master like Niwai fail. Merlin hid behind a stone in Stonehenge and secretly cast a spell. The spell was very simple. It was to make people trip, and the most serious damage was to sprain their feet. Originally, this kind of spell might not do anything to Niwai, even if it was cast 1,000 times, but now Niwai was concentrating on dealing with Kai and had no way to pay attention to Merlin, so she fell for it. A dignified magic master fell flat on his face. When she wanted to stand up, Kai's double swords had already stopped between her neck. She lost, and lost in a very ridiculous way. Chapter 73. Nothing. Seeing the long sword on her neck, Niwai was a little bit incredulous. She knew Kai was very strong, but she never thought that she would lose. As a master of magic, she had thousands of ways to defeat Kai, but she didn't expect that she would be defeated by Kai in such a trifling way. Do you think you won? Niwai was very unconvinced. She believed that if she had another chance, she would never lose. If she hadn't underestimated the power of Merlin's trouble, making her and Kai one-on-one, Niwai believed that she would never lose. Almost. Isn't it obvious now? Kai didn't care about it. If he lost, he lost. Why did he have to say so much? Does stabbing someone to death with a dung fork not count as murder? The expression on Niwai's face froze, and she was a little speechless. Of course she was not convinced, but she didn't know what to say. But Niwai is indeed a witch. She didn't dwell on this too much. Instead, she looked at Kai with a weak face, and then said to Kai with a generous look, "Then kill me, Tisk." Kai looked at this woman who was at least 50 years old pretending to be young. This woman was still the same as before. She liked to pretend to be pure and cute even though she was old. That's fine. The problem is that she looks really young. If someone who doesn't know the details sees Niwai, they will definitely think she is only 16 or 17 years old. Her appearance is really deceptive. Of course, this is not the point. The point is that Kai's really hard to kill. If it were another enemy, Kai would not have so much nonsense and would have chopped off her head with a sword. But the problem is that Niwai is different. Kai has known her for a long time. She came to King Uther's court at about the same time as Kai was born. In other words, Kai grew up under her watch. With this kind of relationship, it is really difficult for Kai to kill her. Although Niwai is an irreconcilable enemy to King Uther, as far as Kai is concerned, he and Niwai have no hatred. Kai is not the kind of ruthless hero who can kill his relatives to prove his truth. In his previous life, he was just an ordinary policeman and could not be so hard-hearted. It is also because of understanding Kai's personality that Niwai can be so calm. She knows that Kai will not kill her. After all, up to now, she has not really done anything evil that Kai cannot tolerate. Why should Kai kill her? In short, Niwai is now in a stable state of mind. Seeing Niwai with a playful face, Kai is also very upset. What should he do now? He really has no way to deal with Niwai. Kill? Impossible. Kai can't do it. Catch? It's better to kill her. King Uther will never let her go. Let her go? It doesn't seem good. After all, she is an enemy. Now Kai is in a dilemma. Haha, you said you can't be cruel. Sure enough, you still love me, Kai? Niwai had a triumphant expression on her face. Hey, talk properly. You are at least 30 years older than me. What do I love you about? Kai was really not used to Niwai's outspokenness. When he was a child, this woman liked to tease Kai with all kinds of outrageous words, which made Kai feel ashamed even though he was 30 or 40 years old. Okay, tell me, is there any way to save Arthur without paying price? Or if the price is a little lower, I can accept it. Niwai was lying on the ground, too lazy to get up, so she simply changed her comfortable position and lay on the ground, then said with disdain, "Humph! What do you think the water-seeking beast is? What do you think ancient magic is? Ancient magic is the rule of the world and the essence of all things. Its rules cannot be changed, and no one can override it. Not to mention me, even the creator of ancient magic cannot violate its rules. Arthur was injured by the water-seeking beast. That was the choice of ancient magic, and there was no other way except equal exchange." Kai was silent for a while. He had been observing Niwai's expression and found that she was indeed not lying. Thinking of this, Kai could only make the worst plan. He only had that one trick left. Although the success rate was not 100%, it was not low. He could only take the risk. Thinking of this, Kai put away the weapon in his hand and said to Niwai, "You go." He had no way to deal with Niwai, so he might as well let her go. As for King Uther, anyway, if he didn't say it, Merlin wouldn't say it, and King Uther wouldn't know it. Niwai looked at Kai with a flickering look in her eyes as he retreated, and then a playful smile flashed across her face. "No matter what you say, I won't leave until I get a Naiad crystal." At this moment, Niwai actually played tricks. Kai glanced at the woman, turned around and walked to Merlin's side, and took the Naiad crystal. Niwai's eyes immediately lit up and stared at Kai. "I really can't kill you, but..." Kai threw the crystal on the ground. Niwai was stunned at first, and then immediately knew what Kai was going to do. "I can't let you use this thing to deal with Camelot, no." Amid Niwai's unwilling cry, Kai's long sword slashed fiercely on the crystal. Kai's double swords were originally a divine weapon, which was specially made for Kai by the Asgardians to thank him for his achievements. In order to make this artifact, Asgard consumed countless precious materials and even pulled in dwarves and light elves to cast it. Its own power is already very, very strong. Even if this artifact is not in its original form, but is divided into two parts, sealing all the magic effects, the physical properties brought by its materials alone are already very powerful. In addition to the baptism of the dragon's breath and the blessing of Merlin's magic, even though the Naiad magic crystal is said to be indestructible, it was chopped into pieces in an instant. At the moment the magic crystal shattered, a huge light rushed straight into the sky, and the dark clouds that had gathered above the sky were also broken at this moment. The blessed island, which had never seen the sun all year round, finally welcomed the gift of sunshine at this moment. As the beam of light gradually shrank, the original crystal gradually turned into dust and blew away in the air. How could you? Seeing that the Naiad crystal that she had obtained with great effort turned into dust in Kai's hands, Niwai, who had always seemed to be scheming, could no longer control her emotions. "Now no matter what conspiracy you have, everything is over. Let's go. I advise you not to do those meaningless things, even if it is for your own good. The Naiad crystal may be very important to wizards, but to Kai, this thing has no meaning. He doesn't know Celtic magic, and this thing can't upgrade Kai's energy bar, so it's better to just destroy it. It can also be regarded as breaking Niwai's thoughts. Hey, let me give up. Unless I die. Otherwise, I will definitely complete my revenge. This is the choice of fate. You can't stop it, Kai, all this has just begun." Perhaps she was really furious. Niwai screamed and kept shouting. "Just like you want to save Arthur. You have to pay the price." The same goes for Uther. With a scream, Niwai also disappeared in the wind, leaving only Niwai's sharp curse echoing in the abandoned castle. Chapter 74 Primordial Water. Kai could only sigh at Niwai's rage, and there was nothing he could do. As I said, if you want to blame someone, you can only blame King Uther, the source of all evil. This old man has offended people in the first half of his life. Sometimes Kai finds it incredible. How did the old man live to this day? Thinking about his list of enemies, Kai's scalp tingles, but others have lived to this day with good food and drink. In short, the matter of Niwai and the Naiad magic crystal has come to an end. Now, they still have to find a way to save Arthur. Merlin waited for a long time and found that Niwai had really left, so he walked out from behind the stone. "Sir, are you really going to let that Niwai go so easily?" Although Merlin is kind, he is not soft-hearted to a woman who wants his life. and for some reason, every time he sees that Niue, he feels scared and always feels like he is being stared at by a beast. If possible, he really wants Kai to get rid of her. Kai glanced at Merlin and shook his head. My relationship with her is very complicated. I can't explain it in a few words. In short, don't mention her in front of others after you go back, especially in front of His Majesty. Kai didn't explain to Merlin the complicated relationship between Niue and Camelot. After all, these things are King Uther's not. Kai knows that it doesn't matter. If others know about it, Kai is not sure how King Uther will react. Anyway, there is a high probability that he will kill to silence them. Oh, Merlin didn't doubt anything. He was not stupid. Just the words that Niue said just now had revealed enough information. There must be a secret in the middle. And it also involved King Uther. Once Merlin's small body was involved, he would naturally capsize at any time. What should we do now? Arthur, Merlin couldn't continue talking, because the solution to the problem was already in front of them. They had no choice but to use this holy grail of life. The only problem now is the price that the holy grail wants. Kai didn't say anything, but just put the holy grail in front of him, thinking about something with a gloomy face. After about 10 minutes, Kai finally made up his mind. This is the only way. Kai just raised the holy grail and hadn't taken the next step yet. Merlin immediately reacted and Kai was really going to use the holy grail. Although Merlin didn't know the specific use of the holy grail, it was not difficult for Merlin to guess from Niue's words before that the use of the holy grail would require a huge price. Sir Kai, I think we can think about it. In Merlin's opinion, Kai was planning to sacrifice himself, so he stopped Kai immediately. Consider what? Maybe we have other ways. Maybe that Niue lied? We should be calmer, and even if we have to sacrifice, we should sacrifice me. Compared with you, I am the insignificant one. You don't need to do this. Merlin is a good boy, he can't watch Kai sacrifice himself. Hearing this, Kai laughed. What nonsense are you talking about? Do we still have time to think of other ways? We can wait, but Arthur can't. Besides, Arthur is my brother. I should pay any price to save him. Merlin was immediately anxious when he heard Kai say that, but he didn't know how to persuade Kai. He could only scratch his head and face, and his face turned red with anxiety. Seeing Merlin so anxious, Kai was both amused and moved. Now he understood why Arthur would protect his little friend so much. At least his kindness is indisputable. Okay, you don't have to be so anxious. Since I dare to do this, I naturally have my own way. Seeing Merlin so anxious, Kai had to reveal some of his cards. What way? Merlin asked immediately. Kai rolled his eyes. This kid was really rude. But seeing that he was also kind-hearted, Kai didn't bother to argue with him. This is my way. Kai took out a small crystal bottle and shook it in front of Merlin. The crystal bottle seemed to contain some liquid, but the liquid was too transparent. Only a few glimmers of light could be seen when it was shaken. If you didn't look carefully, you couldn't tell that there was anything in the crystal bottle. What is this? Merlin had not been exposed to magic for a long time, and he was very curious about those strange things. This is the primordial water. Do you remember the story of my adventure in ancient Egypt that I told you about? The people there also had a very brilliant civilization. In their legends, the world was born from the primordial water. Could this be? Merlin immediately widened his eyes and asked in disbelief. Of course not. What are you thinking about? This bottle of primordial water is a magical liquid created by the supreme ruler of ancient Egypt, the sun god Ra. Although this water cannot produce everything like the real primordial water, it also has extremely powerful power. This bottle of primordial water has been cast by a powerful ancient Egyptian goddess, which can help me offset the crisis of death. When Kai was traveling in Asia Minor, he happened to encounter the ancient Egyptian gods launching a war against Sumer. Kai stood on the side of the Sumerians in this war. But in the late stage of the war, there was an internal conflict among the ancient Egyptian gods. Set, the god of war and desert in ancient Egypt, launched a rebellion and defeated the ancient Egyptian pharaoh, the god of abundance Osiris, and called himself the second generation of pharaoh. He also launched a war of conquest against other Egyptian gods. In the end, Set even killed his and Osiris's father, the sun Ra, and completely mastered the authority of ancient Egypt. The character of this god of war and desert is more brutal than other ancient Egyptian gods. After launching the rebellion, he not only did not stop the war with the Sumerians, but intensified it, causing the Sumerians to suffer very serious losses. So the then Sumerian king Gilgamesh decided to join forces with Horus, the son of the former Egyptian pharaoh Osiris, to overthrow Set's brutal rule. Kai was among them. In the end, with the help of Horus and some ancient Egyptian gods who opposed Set, they finally defeated Set and revived the dead sun god Ra. It was also because of this incident that the war between the Sumerians and the Egyptians ended peacefully. And the bottle of primordial water was a gift from the sun god Ra to Kai, and this bottle of primordial water was also blessed by the Egyptian goddess of life Isis, giving it the function of dying in place of death. It was also because of this that Kai had the confidence to use the Holy Grail of life. Merlin stared at the crystal-clear crystal bottle with wide eyes, as if he wanted to see clearly how this thing could have such a magical function. Chapter 75 Exchange. However, although the primordial water had a substitute effect, Kai was not 100% sure. After all, no one knew how the Holy Grail of life charged a price. Celtic magic was very strange, and it was very different from the spells Kai encountered outside. It was not the same path at all. If the Holy Grail of life bypassed the primordial water, Kai would really die. But now, Kai seemed to have no other choice but to take a gamble. Of course, Kai did not tell Merlin about this, because there was no need. Soon, Kai was ready to use the Holy Grail. The method of using the Holy Grail was recorded on the scroll. It was not difficult. As long as you mastered the method, it was not troublesome to use it. Even if Kai did not know Celtic spells, he could use it. Tyrannus, as the spell was chanted, the sky suddenly darkened, and then the Holy Grail in Kai's hand emitted a soft light golden light, and then a drizzle began to fall. In the drizzle and light, some transparent and shiny water slowly gathered in the golden Holy Grail. As the water in the Holy Grail increased, Kai found that his vitality began to decrease rapidly, as if something was absorbing his vitality. What's worse is that Kai himself has no ability to interrupt this process. As the Holy Grail began to fill up, Kai found that not only his vitality, but even his soul seemed to be being drawn away by something. The original water that Kai had placed high hopes on seemed like a fake product at this time, without any movement. This is really over. This is the only thought in Kai's mind. Just when Kai fell into despair, a sudden pain from the depths of his soul almost made Kai faint. Merlin on the side suddenly heard Kai scream and was startled. He saw Kai suddenly fell to the ground with his head in his arms, and the Holy Grail seemed to be stimulated by something, shining brightly, 10 times brighter than before. Merlin wanted to pull Kai away, but before he could get close to the Holy Grail, he was bounced away by an invisible force, and hit the stone pillar of Stonehenge and fainted. So Kai could only bear the pain of tearing his soul alone. It was unknown how long it had passed before the pain that had penetrated deep into the soul slowly subsided, and Kai's sanity slowly returned. When he looked up at the Holy Grail again, the Holy Grail floating in the air had changed greatly. Many unknown reliefs and patterns appeared on the original golden cup body, and at the same time, wisps of blue-green flames appeared on the cup body. This flame did not make people feel hot, but gave people an unusually warm feeling. Looking at the Holy Grail that had been completely changed, Kai spread out his palm, and the original water in his hand was safe and sound. Kai smiled bitterly. Oh, is this a blessing in disguise? On the attribute panel in Kai's mind, the energy points originally obtained from killing the Death Knight disappeared at some point, and even the energy bar that had grown to 1/6 again was emptied. But correspondingly, the Holy Grail of life belonged to Kai. In every sense. Kai thought for a long time before he made a guess. The condition for exchanging the Holy Grail was 1 life for 1 life. If Arthur wanted to be saved, 1 person had to be sacrificed. Kai chose himself. He originally planned to use the primordial water to carry him through. Unexpectedly, the Holy Grail exchanged for something other than souls. The primordial water was helpless. Kai voluntarily offered his soul, which was almost like suicide. The primordial water would not care about suicide. Although this was not humane at all, it was reasonable. Kai was really going to die this time, but who told him to have a system? Although his system was simple, it was there anyway. Moreover, the Holy Grail wanted souls. It happened that Kai's system was specially designed to collect souls. So in order to protect Kai, the host, the system took the initiative to trade its own experience to the Holy Grail as a price. I don't know if the Holy Grail felt that the quality of the soul power given by Kai was too high, so it sucked it hard. In the end, it obviously exceeded the share of the transaction, so according to the principle of fairness, It regarded itself as part of the price and traded everything to Kai. So now, this holy grail belongs to Kai completely. This is Kai's guess. Although there is no evidence to prove it, this is the most reasonable explanation. When Merlin woke up again, it was already night, and he was tied to Kai's horse. Merlin's first reaction was that he was kidnapped. But he soon found Kai, who was riding another horse in front to lead the way. They had left the dead forest and were heading back. Merlin struggled twice, but found that Kai's skills were very solid and he couldn't get away at all. "Are you awake?" Merlin was about to call Kai, but he didn't expect Kai to find out that he was awake in advance. "How do you feel?" Kai asked Merlin about his condition while untying Merlin from the horse. "It's okay, just a little headache." Merlin got off the horse weakly, and almost fell down when he stood on the ground. "And my whole body is numb. I'm sorry, I was afraid you would fall, so I tied you a little tight." "It will be fine." After a little movement, Kai apologized insincerely, and then took out a kettle for Merlin to drink some water. This unfortunate child's health is really not good. He was just hit, but he fainted for a whole day. If Kai didn't have some medical knowledge, this child would be in big trouble. It's normal for him to feel weak all over after not eating or drinking for a day. Merlin was indeed thirsty, so he picked up the kettle and kept drinking it. After drinking a lot of water, he finally felt much better. Only then did he have the mind to care about Kai's situation. "Are you okay? I saw you were in great pain at the time, and I was going to help you, but I don't know what happened. I fainted." "Hey, eat more meat when you go back." What else can Kai say to such a weak chicken? He can only pat him on the shoulder to show encouragement. At first, Merlin didn't understand the logical relationship between them, so he just said "oh" stupidly, but his face immediately turned red. Is this despising him? Definitely despising him. But after thinking about it, Merlin found that he seemed to have nothing to refute, because he was indeed a weak chicken. How could he save people like this? In the end, someone else saved him. Merlin's expression kept changing with his inner thoughts, and he finally lowered his head in shame. "Okay, it's all right now. What I thought before was right. The primordial water really worked. What we have to do now is to rush back as soon as possible and heal Arthur." Kai comforted Merlin, then started to make a fire and cook. He wanted to continue on his way, but he was afraid that Merlin couldn't bear it, so he could only eat first. Then take a rest and continue on his way. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.